Hello, everybody.
Hello. Are you ready to talk about some oiled abs?
We're going to talk about the Golden Boys today. Everybody, welcome to Lorebeards 40,000. We should introduce ourselves.
We should
Alexis.
actually.
Alexis.
So, hi everyone. My name is Norn Queen Alexis. I am a wargamer, a painter, a Viking reenactor, a cosplayer, and I am currently ranked number 3 in Iceland, which is pretty cool.
That is awesome. I am constantly proud of your record at the
Granted, there's only 41 of us, but that's still pretty good.
It's quite good, I would say. Quite good. Hello, everybody. I'm Ross Watson. I'm a game designer and author. I've worked on a bunch of Warhammer 40k role-play books, several Warhammer 40k video games. I worked on White Dwarf for a year and a half, so I have a lot of knowledge about 40k, and I'm here to share it with you today because today we're covering Henry Cavill's favorite faction.
Yeah, the Supermen. The beings literally magicked into existence.
Well, sufficiently advanced technology is involved to make it magical. You know, the old Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic quote, which I love, by the way. And it definitely describes a whole bunch of stuff from the Dark Age of technology in Warhammer 40k. If it comes from the Dark Age technology, you might as well just say a wizard did it because it is sufficiently advanced technology.
Also, I hope you are ready for me to complain about how all of their weapons are named incorrectly, because I'm going to go on a tirade about that.
Well, I mean, if you'd like to start with that, we could just get that out of the way now.
Well, before we do that, I need everyone in chat to just type something in the YouTube chat just so we know that it's actually working. Because last week we were having a bit of a pickle with it. So yeah, if you guys could just say like hello or something in the chat, or just call Ross a butt, that always works too.
Why am I the butt? Oh, I didn't do anything to deserve that. But you know, yeah, just go ahead. Oh, there we go. We're seeing some comments from YouTube. It looks like it's working.
Heck yeah. There we go. Perfect. Awesome. I love you guys. Oh, no one called you a butt yet.
Well, thank God. I am appreciative of that. Thank you, Chad. I do not want to be called a butt. I think so. Let's talk about the basics of the. Oh, we do have one.
Yes. Yes.
You want to bring that one up?
Of course I do.
All right. Ashley Foster 6334 says Ross has a cool butt. Thanks. That's probably the nicest way to call me a butt. I do appreciate that.
I promise you this butt comment is going to come up at the end of our stream.
You can say the butt end of the show.
Yes.
Yes, Slanesh does approve of butts. Thank you, Micah. All right. So the Adeptus Custodes, formerly known as the Legio Custodes in the pre-Heresy era, and colloquially known as the 10,000. They are the personal bodyguard of the Emperor of Mankind and the most elite warriors in the entire Imperium of Man. They are genetically engineered transhuman warriors, even more potent than the Space Marines of the Adeptus Astartes. They stand nearly 9 feet tall in Baroque golden armor and wield the finest weapons ever crafted by Imperial hands.
They look. I'm glad that they changed a bunch of them with the newer kits, because the old ones look really bad.
Well, we're going to talk about like some of the first appearances of these guys today. So, each custodian, which is what they're called, they're individually called custodians, is rumored to have been personally created by the Emperor himself, or through a process that only he has access to, and it is extremely resource intensive and time intensive process to create a custodian. They are, if an individual space marine is like a trumpet, okay, that you would buy from a shop, then each individual custodes is like a Stradivarius violin. They are lovingly handcrafted to much higher standards than your individual space marines, but they fight in very different ways than space marines, and there's things that space marines do that the custodians simply can't. So there's reasons why these two groups are separate. and
We're
have
also
different roles.
We're also gonna bring up their how to put this, their fight alongside the Grey Knights is something that is gonna have to be brought up in today's show as well, because the Grey Knights are something that the Custodians have a bit of a pickle when it comes to dealing with. But they're one of the things that Custodians have a really hard time fighting against chaos. That's why they typically are seen alongside the Sisters of Silence. And now we have the Grey Knights fighting alongside them as well. So there's a whole trifecta of murder that's amazing.
The primary duty of the Custodes is the protection of the Emperor's physical body and the Imperial Palace on Terra. But they also serve as his most trusted emissaries, companions, and keepers of his many secrets. For a very long time, post-Heresy, they were rebuilding their numbers and were very rarely seen outside of Terra, but that has all changed in the current era Indomitus. Following the resurrection of the Primarch Rubute Gilliman, the Custodians have taken a far more active role across the galaxy for the first time in 10,000 years.
Also, we could talk about how that entire story is a retcon from their original story.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I am going to bring up that there are 3 big retcons to Custodes. I think everyone knows the whole woman one is one of them, but there is an even bigger one that comes from Rogue Trader. Back before the Custodes were actually transhuman super soldiers, they were just dudes that protected the Emperor, wielding spears and almost naked.
Yes. They were bare-chested. I think they wore a loincloth.
They wore a loincloth.
Yeah, in the original image.
They have a bolter on a stick with a knife. Like, it wasn't even like a halberd. It was actually just a knife. It was the bayonet, and that was it. They were very silly. There wasn't 10,000 of them at the time. There were just a few of them. Their lore wasn't fleshed out. Now, keep in mind, we're talking really, really, really old lore. Like, we're talking 80s lore to early 90s.
There was a reference to that, though, recently. A couple of references to it.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first depiction of Adeptus Custodes in first edition 40K, which is what I call Rogue Trader, just to differentiate it from the Rogue Trader role-playing game. First edition 40K, 1987. The original model was a bare-chested man in leather trousers, so not a loincloth, but, you know.
Oh, and they had a helmet on. We have to remember they had a helmet on.
Leather trousers, boots, a long black cloak, and a tall, all-enclosing helmet. The rulebook described their uniform as leather breeches and boots with a long black cloak over a naked torso, with helmets that were ancient works of art providing protective equipment and communicators. That is the original 1987. And of course, this was memed on pretty hard. Text-to-speech device did a lot of memes on this. Yep. But there's certain characters, the Pillar Men from JoJo's
Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, very similar to them. Then 2025, the Horus Heresy anthology Era of Ruin made this canon. Would you like to hear about this?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay, so Aaron Devsky-Bowden, which is...
Of course it's ADV.
What friend of the show, friend of mine, great guy, great author.
Friend of mine as well.
Aaron Devsky-Bowden wrote a short story called The Carrion Lord of the Imperium. And in this short story, the Heterian Guard, which we're going to talk about, they are a subgroup of the Custodes. They are the direct bodyguards of the Emperor. They're the ones that stand around his body, okay? The Heterian Guard, they renounced their armor after the Emperor was interred on the Golden Throne and instead stood vigil naked except for their cloaks, loincloths, this is where that comes from, and helms as a mark of their shame at having failed to protect the Emperor on board the Vengeful Spirit.
I hate it. I love and hate it. I love and hate it.
Thanks. I hate it. I don't hate it. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a pretty cool nod to a thing.
What's really funny is the evolution of the Custodes in the Horus Heresy, because the original stories started with them still as just naked dudes. That's all they were. And even in the first Heretic, when you had Galvorback tearing Custodes apart, Custodes weren't considered like super duper soldiers yet. That lore was still being written at the time. So it was something to make the Galvorback look cool doing. But looking back at it at the end of the Heresy, when you have one Space Marine taking down several Galvorback, and then one Galvorback way back in the day taking on several Custodians, it's like, well, how strong is the Galvorback? And the one thing you have to remember about Warhammer 40k is, of course, the unreliable narrator, but it's the lore evolves every edition. Every edition of Warhammer 40k is basically a different canon to this game. That's how I always look at it. I know that's not the exact thing, where canonicity of the Horus Heresy novels are a little bit lower than the canonicity of the codexes or the black books or the red books of the Heresy. But it's really funny how power scaling Custodians works if you are one of those people that have no life and power scale Goku against things. Custodians go from being extremely weak to the most powerful to weak again when Garrow had to fight one to really powerful again.
Their depiction does vary wildly. I think that's a fair point to say.
Yeah.
Although I am not I'm not going to bag on anybody for enjoying a little Thunderdome action to see who would win. There's a YouTube show called Death Battle that I'm a big fan of.
Death battles,
right? And Death Battle is exactly that. Is exactly Thunderdoming two guys against each other. So I'm not. I don't think you have no life if you just want to power scale people. It's like that's natural.
Yeah. I only bag on the people that just do it to Goku. Whenever you talk about something like you like, they're like, well, Goku can beat it. And I'm just like, all right, dude.
Well, even Death Battles did Goku multiple times.
He keeps getting his ass kicked.
By Superman, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is not a show about Goku or power scaling. But you're right that in the lore, the Custodes are often... They teeter on the edge of being an avatar, like, being beaten up, like the Eldar avatar was, like Angron currently is, like a punching bag. So we have an interesting post here from Nestor Vitumbra. In a John Blanche sketch from the early 2000s, it was still noted that post-heresy, the Custodes abandoned the red and gold and adopted mourning black. That color is mentioned in the lore. The color of their armor is mentioned in the lore a couple times. It's strongly implied that the armor actually starts out as gold and then becomes burned black by the Emperor's psychic emanations. So that's an interesting thing. It might also be a representation of their shame. I'm glad you brought this up.
It might also just be a byproduct of standing next to a toxic fuming chair that's on fire.
Well, one of the interesting things we're going to talk about today is whether or not the corpse on the chair is in fact the Emperor or not.
Yeah, we do have to bring that up.
So there's a lot of interesting things we're going to cover today.
Also, one of the more interesting facts that I really like is that the six sisters of battle that were brought before the Emperor by the Custodes, that was one of the first instances of the Custodes being the bodyguards of the Emperor in the lore ever. And I just thought that was super interesting because it was established in a codex prior, just with a little tiny lore blurb, and then it was expanded upon in the Sisters of Battle. So it's really weird that their expansion of lore wasn't from themselves, because they were not a playable army for the longest time. You could bring one in Rogue Trader and then it was gone. It wasn't in first or second or third edition. It wasn't in fourth, wasn't in fifth. Came out, I think, in sixth.
Right. Well, just as they were brought out for the original edition of the Horus Heresy game.
Yeah, they were brought out for that, and I think they came out for 6th edition first, and then they came out for the Horus Heresy, which followed, but was supposed to have the same release schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's around the same time for sure.
Yeah.
And then of course they got a big boost in 8th edition, was it, when the Great Rift opened and they were part of the story for Gilliman and his return? Yeah, that was 8th edition. So yeah, anyway, shall we start with their origins?
Yeah, what the hell is a custodian?
Well, we've answered that a little bit, but I think one of the most interesting facts about the Custodes is that they are quite possibly the most ancient military force of the Imperium in totality, because we know that they were hanging around with the Emperor prior to the Great Crusade, prior even to the Thunder Warriors during the Unification Wars. The Emperor was seen, he was described as the Lord of Lightning, flanked by 4 giants of crimson and gold. And decades later, when the Thunder Warriors were running around, there were 30 custodians with them. So
one of the funny things is me and Ross were talking about this prior, and we could not figure out any other faction that exists in the Imperium that is as old as the Custodes when it comes to the Imperium strictly. My next go-to that was a faction was the Votan. They were the squats at the time, but then the squat lore got rewritten, got retconned into them being abhumans that came from I think it was, what was the end of the Dark Age of technology? What is that era called?
So the Age of Strife ends with the okay, I'm gonna have to look this up. I know the Age of Strife bleeds right into it. It's the Age of the Great Crusade, I think.
But it's just at that point when these Votans started really appearing. They fought in the they actually did fight in the Horus Heresy, which is pretty interesting, though there were no notable characters, no notable stuff, and it's mostly just for you to play Imperial Militia Votan in Horus Heresy, and that's it. That's literally it. So they have no real lore from the Horus Heresy.
So yeah, so Age of Strife ends with the rise of the Emperor and on Terra and the Unification Wars. So
yeah,
just at the end of Dark Age technology, that's when the Unification Wars began.
But we know that the Custodes come from the Dark Age of technology.
It is believed that to be true, yes.
Yeah, again, this is a lot of ifs and ends, and also the if and end of when the Votan actually existed, but they weren't a powerful military at the time. They just existed. They were abhumans, which GW is now insistent that they are both abhumans and Xenos. I think GW just really wanted another Xenos army because they were very uncreative and were just like, we made men, but shorter. Dang it, we failed again.
Well, I don't know. I think the Votan are really cool, but going back to the Custodes, they were created using troves of genetomantic lore. Genetomantic, I love that. It's a great term. From the Dark Age technologies, according to what we know, or at least what we're told that is true. And unlike the mass-produced gene seed process for Space Marines, Custodians are created through an individual and extraordinarily intricate genetic augmentation process that informally is called the Emperor's genetic template. So they're definitely like from his genes in some way. Like the Emperor is essentially their Primarch, if you want to think of it that way.
Well, I mean, the Emperor is a gene seed giver of the Grey Knights. Thanks.
Yeah. The process for creating a custodian, they're selected either in infancy or pre-adolescence, so they're even younger chosen than a Space Marine, and they have to endure multiple decades of alchemical augmentation and psychomimetic training. So again, yeah, a single custodian takes a hell of a lot more effort than 100 Space Marines. Just think about that.
Yep. What was it? We did when I was going through the armies of the Imperium and whether or not they would actually be combat effective on my channel a long time ago, we came to the conclusion that Custodians, well, one, were not combat efficient because they, 9-foot tall, fast moving dudes that take 1,000 years to make. Probably like 100 years to make, but still, that's not good for
at least decades.
Yeah.
Decades at a bare minimum. Also, I mean, it's worth pointing out that the Custodians are bodyguards. They're really good bodyguards. They're like excellent bodyguards. But if it comes to fighting a war, okay, Space Marines are just so much more well designed, well equipped, and well trained for that particular thing. Because anybody who's studied wars knows that logistics, strategy, these are the things that will win you a war. Like, can I have enough material for all of my guys? Can I put my guys where they need to be at the right time? The Custodians,
give me a book on logistics and have the main character just be running supply lines. That's all I want. I don't care about the actual war. Just that as a book. Like, I want somebody in the Cargo 8 driving to the battlefield, just, oh my God, trying to unload all of the equipment for the guard and trying to get back to the actual landing craft to get all of the equipment. I want that as a book.
The first few chapters of Interceptor City are like that, so you may want to check that out.
Yes.
So where was I? So the Custodians, they're at least, it does take many years to make them as opposed to Space Marines, and they're just not an army. They're a bunch of individual warriors who are very, very good, like they're exceptional warriors. But if you want to engage in warfare, the Space Marines are a much better tool.
And even Space Marines aren't very good at long engagements, entrenched engagements. That's why they have the Sisters of Battle and Guard, which are better than them at that. But Space Marines are a strike force.
The Iron Warriors would like to have a word with you, Alexis.
The Iron Warriors, Warriors are dumb.
Also the Death Guard. There are some Space Marines that are very good at this, but typically they are used as shock troops, tip of the spear, etc.
I will say the legions were really good at war.
Yeah.
The chapters are not great at war. They are very good at strike force and key target destruction.
That is fair to say. And I have got a super chat I would like to read. IceVeins88, thank you so much for your support today, sir. By the way, super chats are the best way to support us, support the channel, and keep the show going. Frankly, it is the best way to say I want more Lorebeards, is to give us super chat. So we do appreciate all the support. IceVeins,
that's me more tattoos.
You get more tattoos for Alexis, absolutely. IceVeins88 asks, do you think if a faction of the Custodians had fallen to chaos during the Heresy, that the outcome would have been much different?
So, okay, the only Custodians that fell to chaos, this is a bit of a spoiler warning. So, to this, what was it? It's not this. Yeah, it's the Siege of Terra series. This is a spoiler warning for what happens when the Emperor gets aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Okay, this is the spoiler warning. You can mute right now, and I will put my hand up like this so that you know that you can start it again. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So, when the Emperor teleported aboard the Vengeful Spirit with the Custodians, instantaneously, the Custodians they almost all fell to chaos and fought the Emperor. The Emperor then slew most of them, and the ones that didn't fall stayed by his side. Is it possible for Custodians to fall to chaos? Yes, but the chaos has to be extremely strong. Like, we're talking all four gods unified together on a spaceship with their super special boy strong, because Custodians can hand wave they can hand wave people's possession by chaos. There's in the Siege of Terra that happened recently after Guilliman's crusade back to Terra, a Custodian put his hand on somebody that was mutating into a bird-like creature and just said, stop it. And the guy just went, oh, I didn't even think of that. And just mutated back to a normal person. So yeah, they can fall to chaos. It's not very likely. So yeah, I'll put my hand up real quick so people know that they can, go. Okay. That's my answer.
Well, I think what you're saying is the answer is it wouldn't have changed much. And I have to honestly agree here. The thing is, the Custodians were 10,000 strong until Magnus tried to warn the Emperor about Horus. And then because that was a bad idea, it caused this huge influx of demons into the webway portal right behind the Emperor's throne. And the Emperor was like, fuck, everybody get in there and stop the demons. So the Sisters of Silence and the Custodians fought for years. They fought a battle for years. And I mean, like, no rest just fighting.
We also don't know, like, we know the real-time years to that, but that webway could have had, like, its own time dilation, and they were fighting for thousands of years.
They were
We
fighting.
don't know.
It was a long goddamn time. And in that war, the war in the webway, around 9,000, so 90% of the Custodes died fighting that battle. So there weren't that many.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Aaron Densky-Bowden wrote a passage in that book that I have to give him credit for. It's in Master of Mankind, which is arguably the best book in the Heresy aside from Fulgrim. I think those two are the top books of the Heresy. They're just hands down amazing. But one of my favorite things in that book is how Aaron Densky-Bowden described how all three warriors fight together. The Sister of Silence is literally fighting underneath the Custodian. The Custodian is fighting over and around using his two-handed spear or axe. And as he's swinging it, he's throwing it back to the like normal dude that's grabbing the weapon and just handing him another one so that the Custodian doesn't have to reload his gun. It is so goddamn cool. It's such a good scene that it shows me that if not for the Sisters of Silence, those Custodians all would have died. They simply would have died. They don't have a good enough protection against demons. They would have been overwhelmed eventually, but the sisters were doing some serious work by just being there. Also, they're really good fighters. Like, they are exceptional fighters. And they work together so well. I could praise that book for years, and I will, because I read that book like 5 years ago, and I still praise it.
I need to read that one. I haven't read that one yet. I will say
it also has a cool Titan scene in it, and it has war horns. At any time you include Titans with war horns fighting against other Titans with running, I love it.
Well, I'll be sure to check that out. My answer to this question is because of the war in the webway killing 90% of the Custodes, that the only way to corrupt, I mean, even if you did corrupt the last 10%, which would be extremely difficult because they're scattered throughout the solar system, frankly. I don't know. Unlikely, I think, is my final answer. Is extremely unlikely.
I also just see one comment really quickly that I want to pick.
Yeah, sure.
And I know it's a bit of a joke comment, but I want to pick your brain. I want to say something about this. Are there Brothers of Silence? So the answer to this is actually no. The male blanks are actually taken to the Assassinorum. So there are technically male male Brothers of Silence, but they're all assassins. That's why the overwhelming majority of those assassins are male.
I would counsel you against saying things like all of them are assassins, because
it's in quotes because Jurgen exists.
Many of them become assassins. Some of them become members of the Inquisition and things like that. Part of inquisitional groups. But yes, many of the male nulls or blanks that are discovered end up going to the Officio Assassinorum to become Colexis assassins.
And from what we know about the Sisters of Silence, keep in mind this is extremely limited resources. Like, we're talking 2 sentences in a book is that the Sisters of Silence know how to selectively breed to get women blanks that are also 7 foot tall, because they're huge. But I think the whole thing is that they're Amazons.
Well, there's some evidence to suggest that the pariah gene, tends to be more dominant in females.
Yeah,
but that is, we are way out on the tangent of maybe not, kind of like there's very little lore to I don't even want to get into it. Let's just say I've read it a couple times that maybe possibly it's that. So
to bring this back to Custodes, for some reason Custodians are not affected by blanks.
Well, they're not psychics.
No, I mean, even like how normal people and even Space Marines view blanks is that they're disgusted by them.
Yes.
Custodes are just not affected by them at all.
Unfazed.
They do not care.
Well, I think they sense it. But they are unfazed by it, which is probably due to being exposed to the Sisters of Silence more than any other group. So,
yep.
All right, let's get some more super chats. You guys are doing good. Gary Garrionson, thank you very much, sir. Oh, we love seeing you pop up here. In recent weeks, he says, I've regularly fallen asleep before the stream started, but not today. Well, awesome. Do the Custodes serve humanity, the Imperium, or just the Emperor? Well,
that is a good question.
So their primary job is to protect the Emperor, and they are very, very cognizant of that. Okay. They are extremely aware that their main purpose is to protect the Emperor. However, they don't just stand around to protect his throne, and they serve some very important roles in that they are also emissaries of his authority. A couple of times that this was used was actually during the Battle of Prospero, the burning of Prospero, when they sent Layman Russ to bring back Magnus. He was accompanied by Constantine Valdor and a host of Custodes. Why? Because the Custodes and Constantine Valdor being there showed that this was not just Layman Russ on his own. This was the Emperor saying, hey, you need to come back. So the presence of a custodian is a direct representation of the Emperor's will. So that's one of the other things that they do. And of course, in the era Indomitus, after Guilliman returned, they have been a lot more active about seeking out threats beyond Terra, beyond the solar system, and dealing with it. Also, they were emissaries to all the individual Space Marine chapters who were receiving Primaris reinforcements. And this was really important because, again, Space Marine chapters can be very insular, can be very like, leave me alone. But when a custodian shows up, they all are like, if they're a loyalist chapter at least, will all be like, oh, what can we do to help you, sir? Because you are clearly a representative of the Emperor.
Sometimes even renegade chapters stop being renegade if a custodian's involved. It's extremely rare. We only have one instance of it, but it has happened where a custodian is just like, get back in line. Here's your Primaris reinforcements. You're loyal again.
Tell that story, please.
That is actually during the devastation of Bal. That is when they're getting their reinforcements. That is after the one renegade Blood Angel unit came to aid the Blood Angels. They were untrusted, and then at the end of it, when Guilliman showed up, the Custodians hand over the Primaris Space Marines to them, and they're just like, "Are you loyal?" And he's just like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Well, I wonder if you're talking about the Knights of Blood or if you're getting him confused with the Flesh Terrors.
It's the Knights of Blood.
Okay, I think they were wiped out at the devastation of Baal. But who knows? You know what? I'd like to. You're making me want to go back and check again. So
yeah, now I have to check. It's not the Flesh Terrors, but I do know that the Flesh Terrors rejected the Primaris until they had a talking to.
Well, the Flesh Terrors are the Flesh Terrors.
Yeah.
So the answer, Gary Garrionson, is they do more than just serve the protect the Emperor, but that is still very much their primary role.
Yeah.
Oh, also, they helped create the Sisters of Battle. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
That was one of the times when they intervened during the period where they were essentially dormant. That was one of the few times they showed up and did something big.
And they also did show up during the Beast Arises series, but not in. That's the Beast Arises series, and it's terrible.
Ricky Chapman 3377. Thank you, Ricky Chapman. Really appreciate you. We encountered Custodians in our campaign. I love this guy's RPG stories. We were at the Imperial Palace to talk to the High Lords when we were attacked by a Harlequin troop. We had to run deeper into the palace to escape and witnessed Custodians fighting them. Oh, that's interesting.
How did you get into the Imperial Palace?
I mean,
there are so many questions here. I want to know.
Harlequins, who knows? Eldari bullshit can answer a lot of that.
Yes, it can.
Chris M77, thank you, sir. Appreciate your support. That's a Witcher emblem, I believe he's got there. He says, I'll have to catch the rest of the VOD later, but looking forward to catching up. Thank you, sir. We will.
Hell yeah.
We're gonna get into it. So
and that is the last of the super chats for now.
Cool. So yes, we were talking about the Custodians and basically, so like only one in many thousands of candidates are suitable for even the simplest steps of becoming a Custodes. They are the elite of the elite. And when they get the full process, when they survive through the full process to become a custodian, how can I put this? They are basically they're the strongest individual soldiers, second only to the Primarchs, I think, in the entire Imperium.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is like one Primarch can take on 5 Custodes, could take on like an entire chapter. Is like the crazy level of it.
So they're stronger, faster, and more resilient than the Space Marines, and with senses far beyond any unaugmented human. They do not biologically age, which is Space Marines do. That's an interesting. Space Marines have long lifespans, but they do biologically age. Custodians don't. Some of them are still alive in the current era Indomitus who fought during the Great Crusade. So old men and women now, old men and women.
Yeah.
They have enhanced healing, so they can heal broken bones even in mid-combat. They can recover from injuries that would debilitate lesser warriors. Their conviction in the Emperor's genetic tampering makes them highly resistant to psychic assault, although they do not wield any psychic abilities themselves. There's no such thing as a custodian librarian. Or a psych or custodian.
A Twitch super chat. I'm trying my hardest to find it. I don't see it on my end. I will look on Twitch really quickly. You continue, okay? I'll fix this real fast.
Okay.
Yep.
Also, they're intellectually brilliant. Each custodian's mind is programmed with an encyclopedic knowledge of all arts of warfare, politics, philosophy. They are designed not merely as protectors, but also as the Emperor's companions and conversationalists. That was part of their job, was to keep the Emperor entertained and talk about things that he found interesting. Now, I know I just said earlier that the Custodians don't have the knowledge to fight wars, and I now just said that they do because they study the arts of warfare as part of their training and their brilliance. So how do those two things work together? So yes, they do have the book learning about war. That's true. They have read all the books on war, and they could discuss it very intelligently, and they are very, very smart. But the Space Marines just have the experience, which, as anyone can tell you, there's book learning and then there's experience, and the Custodians just do not have the experience to be good at large scale war. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the logistics, they don't have the strategy. And it's mentioned in the lore several times that these guys fight as individuals. They simply do not fight as units like Space Marines do. And an individual Space Marine squad has fought together in war for decades, if not a century or more. They know how each other's going to react. They can mobilize and react to things on the battlefield in ways that regular human soldiers can't. But this is also true that they can react in ways that the Custodes can't, because the Custodes just, again, don't have that kind of experience. They don't have that kind of training, and they don't have that kind of mindset. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is that they do not think like soldiers. They think like bodyguards, because that's what they are, and that's what they have been for millennia.
I think it was in the oh my god, it's the book with Alea in it, the Sister Silence and her boy toy, Valerian. I can't remember the name of the book, but in that book, he knows more about the Sister Silence's fighting style than other Custodians. So because he fought alongside her, he knows her fighting style, and he complements it really well. But when he fights alongside Custodes, he has to fight differently. I just thought that was cool, and I wanted to bring that up. Also, I found the super chat that is on Twitch. Thank you for helping me out, Hawk. You're awesome, and I love you. but I don't know how to bring it up because I can't find it on here, which is weird.
Well, Hawk, if we ask Hawk to find it and post it for us, I think he can do that. So yeah, they're 10,000 strong, roughly 10,000 strong, and
I thought I posted to both.
They have been involved in some pretty big events during the Unification Wars. At the very end of the Unification Wars, they were instrumental in culling the Thunder Warriors, fighting alongside the Dark Angels, or what would become the Dark Angels.
Okay. I found it.
So Hawk, who posted this?
This is by Dinoman95.
Right. Here we go. Dinoman95 says, I know a lot of people aren't huge fans of Custodians vehicles, but I really like them. They have kind of a similar vibe to AdMech vehicles, almost a 1920s rounded aesthetic. Art Deco, I think you mean?
Yeah, Art Deco design. I love it.
They look really cool. I will say this, I am a fan of the Custodians vehicles. Rules-wise, they've never been amazing, which is kind of a bummer.
Oh, I would fight you on that one in 10th edition and 9th edition.
Well, in terms of the Horus Heresy game, they've never been that amazing.
Yeah, Horus Heresy, you just bring a ton of infantry and walk over your opponent's army.
Well, vehicles in general have had their struggles in the Horus Heresy rule set. I'm glad to hear that they are really cool in Warhammer 9th and 10th edition. That's really good.
In 10th edition, the current best list in the world is 3 Land Raiders. Do you know how much that annoys me? Because it's just Custodes jump out, kill something, jump back into the Land Raider, and you can't do anything with them. It's the most unfun way of playing against an army ever.
Oh,
and I hate it.
That does suck. Wow. Woo.
That reminds me. Number 1 player in the world. He's actually, I think, number 4 in Custodes in the world at the moment. Ridiculously good player. He's playing that list, and I cannot stand it. I love him to death. He's an amazing player. Currently, we're 2-3 his favor. And my God, those Custodes are the bane of my existence.
That reminds me of some of the shenanigans you could pull in 3rd edition with the Rhino Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fish of Fury.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey, we've got a super...
I do want to talk about the design of the Custodian vehicles. The original design of the Custodian vehicle is very similar to a very particular deodorant stick from way back in the day. A lot of you know what I'm talking about. A very long time ago, they were doing a custom vehicle builder in White Dwarf. And in that book itself, they had the infamous deodorant land speeder, which inspired multiple vehicles in 40K for some reason, because GW does not know how to let go of the past. They will be like, we did this 30 years ago. It must be a good idea, which is really reminiscent of how the Imperium looks at older tech. So I love it. But I can see the inspiration for the deodorant stick flyer and the Custodian vehicles and the land speeder variants from Heresy. I just thought those were amusing.
It is funny. And having worked with the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and several other IPs, I can tell you, I think Games Workshop handles that, bringing things from the past and making them interesting and new. I think they handle it pretty well comparatively.
I fully agree.
Azure Shadow 88, thank you for your support today, sir. He says, I have a gripe with the Outcast Dead. Okay, I knew this was going to come up. I have read the Outcast Dead. I really like that book, to be really clear. I think the Outcast Dead is an excellent novel for the Horus Heresy, but I know what you're talking about. Azure Shadow says, why let a World Eater punch through the center of Artificer armor? If you want him to kill a Custodes, do anything but that. Yeah, unfortunately, the Custodes get very weak in this book, the Outcast Dead, and an unaugmented World Eater rips the heart out of a Custodian through his armor, which is like, what? Really?
There were 2 instances of this. This is the other one. The first one is the first heretic, where Custodians die like they're nothing.
But I am glad you brought this up, Azure Shadow 88, because I like the Outcast Dead, and I'm glad to talk about it, even though, yeah, this scene made me cringe a little bit. I got to admit, I was like, oh, really? That seems... Anyway, But thanks for bringing it up. Peter Osborne, 8315. Thank you for your support, sir. He says, I've been waiting for this one. So have I. I much prefer fantasy to 40K, but these golden boys and girls are my jam. Hey, you and Henry Cavill both, sir. Very excited to watch this episode later. Thank you. We're here for it. And I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. And then Lord Voron, our very own Lord Voron.
Oh, hell yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your support, sir. Valerian fights a Primaris and considers prolonging their fight to gauge their difference to the Firstborn, but concludes he doesn't have the luxury of time, so he quickly kills them and then simply says, not so different then.
Yeah. Yeah, Valerian's kind of a dick. I love Valerian.
Was this the Minotaurs?
It wasn't the Minotaur fight. I think this was something to do with Call. I remember this fight. I can't remember where it's from.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Well, I am going to have to check that out.
It was the Minotaurs. Okay.
So it was Minotaurs. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, this sounds like it was from the Minotaurs, which we are going to cover. They're on the list.
Yeah. Watchers of the Throne. Yeah.
Watchers of the Throne is the name of the book. Okay, cool. We will. That is one I also need to read. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.
That's the same book with Valerian talking to Alea. About how he knows her fighting style better. Also that they hook up at the end. I don't care if that's headcanon.
Romance. We need more romance in 40K.
He literally gives her a teleport Homer and says, call me when you need me.
So call me maybe. I gave you a teleport Homer.
Sister Silence mentions that she was on Terra before they were banished, which would make her very, very, very old.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to read that book to kind of get more about that. But we're going to do an episode on Sisters of Silence as well. So
yes, there's not much to say about them, but I will say a whole bunch because I love them.
So getting back to the Custodes, I do want to point out one interesting conflict they had during the Great Crusade, which is when the Emperor went out against an orc warlord called Garkul Blackfang on a planet called Gyros Thravian. He brought 1,000 Custodes with him, which is the most famous battle involving Custodians that isn't the Battle of Prospero. And in this fight, the Emperor decapitated the warlord who was riding on top of a Gargant, while all of his Custodians slaughtered over 100,000 greenskins.
Lore accurate. I mean, quite literally. Tabletop accurate, too.
Yeah, book accurate Custodians. And in this battle of this size, where it's, if you have 1,000 versus 100,000, that's 100 to 1 odds. In this battle, only 3 Custodians died. And to honor their deaths, the Emperor engraved their names on his own armor, which is pretty cool.
That must have taken forever because Custodians have extremely long names.
They do. They can. They definitely can. This is Jake Wu 8268. Wasn't this the story where only 3 of the Custodians died? Yes, this is the one.
Funny enough, another orc basically choked out the Emperor and almost killed him. Maybe that's the battle he should have brought the 1,000 with him.
Yeah, that's Eleanor, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's Eleanor. Well, he had Horus with him. And again, the Space Marines are just better at warfare. I want to be really clear. So I probably would have made the same call. I probably would rather had the Sons of Horus with at the time, the Lunar Wolves. I'd rather have the Lunar Wolves than the Custodes. But, it is what it is. So that's the thing I want to talk about for that. There is the War in the Webway, which we briefly discussed. And then we briefly discussed the Siege of Terra, where the Vigil Spirit shows up and Horus and the Emperor have their climactic confrontation. The Emperor is accompanied by some Custodians, but the Custodians...
if only the Emperor had some type of anti-demon magic women that he could have teleported with him to prevent all of that, which would have allowed him to get to Horus much quicker. Oh, dang it. Too bad those don't exist.
Well, okay, so let's take a little tangent for a second. If the Emperor didn't take them with him and instead took Custodians, which he did do, and Dorn,
He took Custodians and Dorn. I'm just saying if he brought like a few Sisters of Silence with him.
Right. So why? And the first thought that occurs to me is that the Emperor, of course, his psychic strength is his greatest weapon. He is the strongest psychic to have ever lived. So it would be kind of hamstringing himself a little bit. Secondly,
is he affected by the Sisters of Silence?
I would have to assume at least a little. But here's the other thing is that I think the Emperor went to the Vengeful Spirit in hopes of rescuing Horus rather than killing him.
Yeah.
And to do that, he needs the full power of his psychic strength.
Yeah, but then he wouldn't have lost his Custodians that were with him. They could have just stayed there.
Listen, I don't know. I'm speculating. The Emperor makes a lot of mistakes and is profoundly flawed. So
it could be the Emperor was so cocky that he could have done this by himself. And somebody points out that they said that they were all dead. No, they weren't. The Sisters of Silence there were not a lot of them left because most of them were still fighting in the Webway at this point because they're still fighting in the Webway up until this day. You know, that never stopped. Magnus was told to do nothing, and he even did that wrong. But there were a few Sisters of Silence left. Janita Krall, unfortunately, died in the worst way possible. Hey, here's this super great warrior, and I did the numbers on this so many times. She annihilates Karn the Betrayer. Karn gets run over by a rhino and dies twice in the Heresy, only to be brought back by plot convenience. But Janita Krall, dead. And I'm just like, oh, I'm mad about that. I'm still mad about that. I'm going to be mad about that. But there were just a few Sisters of Silence left that could have gone with him. Even if it was like one or two, just to protect the Custodians.
Letty says, I believe the Sisters of Silence wouldn't have made too much of a difference on the Vengeful Spirit, as even Magnus managed to overpower their blank field when Guilliman showed up on the moon.
Oh my God, I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate that so much. That book, when Magnus did that, because that is one of the Crusade books where he did that, was so goddamn stupid. Because even Dracnion, the strongest demon to ever exist, couldn't hurt them, couldn't see them. He could hurt them by going, hey, I know that there's nothing there, throwing things at it, and then being like, hey, the nothing disappeared. Awesome. But Magnus being like, aha, I could see you. It's like, no.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the Sisters of Silence and the effects of blanks, again, wildly varied by author and time frame. But this is not a show about blanks and nulls and the Sisters of Silence. This is a show about the Custodians. So we should probably.
I'm still going to be mad about that.
Hey, you're allowed. You're allowed to have your preferences.
Magnus is not simply stronger. Dude gets bodied by a nameless dude.
Well, Magnus is a very strong psyker. He's not as strong as the Emperor. He's not as strong as Malkador, but he's very, very strong. And unlike Malkador, Magnus has a hell of a lot of training and time, especially by the time of the era Indomitus, to hone his gifts. It's not just a factor of strength; it's a factor of experience, possibly as well. I don't know. We're wildly speculating. We don't know. Really. Yep. There's no way to tell for sure. So,
I'm joking.
Where I was trying to get to is that the Custodes did go with the Emperor on the Vengeful Spirit, but there were only a handful of them that managed to overcome the forces of chaos that were present on that ship. And they ultimately fought fiercely as hell on the Vengeful Spirit, but they did not make it to that big confrontation with the Emperor and Horus. They were sidelined, they were wounded, they were distracted, they were drawn away. And this is, for them, for the Custodes, this is their lowest moment. This is their biggest L, is the fact that they couldn't protect the Emperor on board the Vengeful Spirit. And this is why they wear black mourning cloaks afterwards, is to represent the shame of their failure.
It's It is one of my favorite things is that we actually have a canonical defeat of the Custodes as like one of their major plot points. Is that because they failed and the Emperor died in quotes, big quotes, because he's technically undead, but you know, whatever. He's like a master lich at this point. His phylactery literally is the Golden Throne. It's because I love it because he had to send his favored custodian away before this happened because of Dracnian. He was injured going into the fight because of Dracnian. And then he had to fight his way through the Vengeful Spirit, which arguably had an endless swarm of demons on it.
I think you're confusing Dracnian because Dracnian is Abaddon's weapon, not Horus's.
No. I'm talking about Dracnian as a demon wounded him in the War in the Webway.
Okay.
It actually, it did cut him, and the Custodians were like, oh shit, we have to take this fight seriously. Because they stood on the side, and then he swung his sword once and banished all of the demons, and, you know, it was definitely an anime moment.
Okay.
But one of the coolest scenes is the Custodians finally making it to the Emperor. Like, what was left of them making it to the Emperor. And I do love that some of the artwork always puts like a single Space Marine in the background, just like, hey guys, I'm just leave. It's a bit much for me.
So after the end of the Heresy, the Custodians were reformed. They were no longer the Legio Custodes. They were now the Adeptus Custodes. Guilliman reorganized the entire Imperium, and their role changed slightly in that they became Castellans of the Imperial Palace, and also the solar system in general. Like there's little pockets of Custodians on, it's called the Solar Watch, that exists on the different defense platforms and other scanning stations that are scattered throughout the solar system. But they basically withdrew almost entirely from the galactic affairs to do this. They were rarely seen even by other imperial institutions. And partially this was because they needed to rebuild. There were very, very few of them left after the Heresy. And so they needed time to get back up to their full 10,000 strength. But they didn't just sit around idly. One of the things they did was they maintained their combat readiness through things called the blood games. Alexis, what are the blood games?
So I absolutely love this idea because if it works, the Imperium ends. Now, I assume that if it ever does work, the Custodian that did it won't do it. But the blood games are a Custodian tries to kill the Emperor in any way they see fit. They have basically an infinite budget. They can do whatever they want to try to destroy the Emperor. I mean, the most recent one was in the Codex with the one woman whose name I can't remember right now, but her whole thing was that she was going to sneak in a like nuclear bomb and try to teleport it into the Imperial Palace to blow it up. And that didn't work. They got caught. Another one was the deal with the Drukhari to fix the Golden Throne, and the Custodians then killed all of them because the Drukhari were like, we could kill the Emperor, awesome. And then, yeah, that turned out to be a blood game. They've had Harlequins come in and test the Custodes. That one is a bit weird whether or not GW retconned that one, because in some writings that I've seen of it, it is something that the Custodians just killed them. And in others, there's a lot of dead Custodians, so it really depends on where you read it from, what edition you read it from. But it's spy versus spy. It is literally them trying their hardest to figure out any and all ways that the enemy is going to destroy the Emperor and countering it.
Micah points out the blood games were possibly invented by Alfarius, and Professor Schaap says that they're based on something Alfarius used to do before the Heresy. Possibly. It is very Alpha Legion-y. But again, when it comes to the Alpha Legion, nothing is certain. We don't know. We can only speculate and guess, because also, the Alpha Legion is just like that.
Didn't that whole thing come from the Alfarius book, where the first line of the book is, I am Alfarius and this is a lie?
I mean, I wouldn't trust
I'm not
anything they
sure,
said.
but yeah.
So. We have a quick little super chat from NecroPlayer97. Always good to see you, sir. I love your little Kobold Hero Forge mini. Custodians are pretty cool, he says. Was happy to see all the new lore and models that a lot of well-adjusted people were totally normal and not at all weird about. He's referring to the revelation from Games Workshop that some of the Custodians are women and have always been women, which I thought was a great step forward, frankly, in representation in Games Workshop.
It's also a giant joke that everyone who's in the community for so long knew about. Like, when the Rogel Dorn got announced, they did the same thing. They're like, it's always been there. The Wraith Knight, it's always been there. You see that Wraith Lord on the cover? That was actually a Wraith Knight. And it's like, no, it wasn't. We know that. Just like Titans being in the lore. They were retconned back in. Like, yeah, well-adjusted people. Yeah. But I do love the women Custodians. Their faces look really good. The new models look insanely good. I'm probably going to pick up that box. I don't want to, but I'm probably going to because I know that I have no control over how much I spend on this hobby in any way, shape, or form. And if I see like new shiny miniatures, I'm going to be like, yeah.
So the Blood Games are ruthless training and security exercises in which the Adeptus Custodes simulate attempts to assassinate the Emperor or compromise the Imperial Palace. The purpose of the games is to test and strengthen Terra's defenses. There's actually a real-world military exercise called Red Cell or Red Cells, which is this exact thing. It's happened in the U.S. military before, actually. But suffice to say, the Blood Games are obviously taken a lot more seriously than any kind of simulation in the U.S. military. Go ahead, Alexis.
This one I saw. I saw this one. So it's a super chat.
Dynaman, thank you very much for your super chat. He says, you mentioned there are some Custodes throughout the solar system. Are there some on Titan? If so, how does that impact the whole Grey Knight thing? Okay, I don't know if there are any on Titan, but I would have to assume probably, given how powerful and important the Grey Knights are.
So as far as I'm aware, and this is taken from like a sentence that Malkador said, there is one watching there during the Horus Heresy. This is before the Grey Knights. So it is very possible that there is one still there, but that's, they know about them because the Custodes know about everything that happens in the solar system.
I would have to assume that the Grey Knights are aware. That the Custodians are aware of Titan and the Grey Knights on Titan. But Titan is, its secrecy is jealously guarded, both by the Inquisition and the chapter itself. So the Mechanicus knows it's there. The Inquisition knows it's there.
Some Inquisition knows it's there.
The Custodians know it's there. But I don't think I would say it's unlikely that there's any kind of permanent detachment stationed there.
Yeah, I don't see a reason for them to be there.
Well, so I could justify a narrative where a Custodian or a very small honor guard of Custodians visits Titan for some sort of specific purpose. Like maybe they're escorting a relic or a high-level conclave of the chapter master of the Grey Knights.
Or bringing Primaris Grey Knights.
Fingers
crossed.
But that would be, in my head, that's a special mission, not a regular assignment. So possibly, I'm going to say maybe, but I don't think it. let me
say
rephrase.
The 2 words.
Say
the 2 words.
There
depends. You go.
So Dynaman, are there some on Titan? I don't think so. Not stationed permanently. And his question of how does it impact the Grey Knights? I don't think it does. I don't think the Custodians have much to do with the Grey Knights, to be honest. And that may be by design.
There's also a question, a statement here. They don't know about the Terminus Decree. All the way up until very recently, the Terminus Decree was just a nothing burger. Now we know that it's if the Emperor were to get off the Golden Throne, the Grey Knights are there to put him back on it. Can the Grey Knights take down the Custodians is a very, very high maybe. Just because we don't know the exact number of Grey Knights. We know they're not a Codex compliant chapter. So we don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question though. Good question.
But I will say this, that might be something that's a part of their blood games.
Well, to get back to the blood games, I'm so excited.
I wanted to tie it back.
I like that. Well done. So the blood games are not recreational. These are no holds barred exercises designed to expose any weakness in the Imperial Palace or the wider Sol System security network. Individual custodians or small teams take on the role of would-be infiltrators or assassins, while the rest of the Custodes and the Imperial security apparatus try to stop them. A custodian can win, quote unquote, a blood game by successfully reaching a critical objective, such as a kill shot on the Emperor's location in a simulation, or like the nuclear weapon deployments.
Yeah.
The failure of a blood game is actually treated as proof that a real enemy might achieve the same progress. So during a blood game, custodians forego their usual armor, their spears, their technological advantages. They're forced to rely purely on skill, guile, and improvisation. They employ all infiltration techniques like disguise, social manipulation, uses of hidden routes throughout the palace, subversion of servitors, other systems, even feigned deaths or near-dead states to slip through detection. What I think is, so you might be wandering around the Imperial Palace and come across what looks like a dead custodian and be like, oh shit, what's this? Only to find out it's actually a custodian playing dead as part of the blood games.
Jerry, we told you the last 5 times you can't just play dead. We're not going to carry you to the Emperor. Oh, dang it, I thought it would work this time.
Blood games can take months, and sometimes years. They can range from subtle political plots and data theft attempts to direct mock assaults on the inner sanctum of the Emperor's Palace. The Imperial Palace. Any success by the attacking custodians triggers immediate upgrades or changes to the defenses, new technology, revised patrol patterns, sealed passages, or even stricter protocols can be put in place. Should a blood game succeed. Failures by any of the defenders during a blood game are considered grave lessons, since the Custodes assume that if one of their own can do it, then a Xenos, a demon, or an arch traitor with full malice might do even worse. And over the 10,000 years that they've been doing this, the blood games have helped make the Imperial Palace one of the most secure locations in the galaxy, with layers of counter infiltration baked into the custodian training.
Now, that's all well and good, but nothing, like, I still find it really funny that it's basically an echo chamber of how to defend the palace.
Yeah.
Because they don't really get anybody else to try to figure it out.
No, they rely almost entirely on themselves.
Yeah.
Micah asks, can they kill someone for the game?
Yes.
Not only yes, but hell yes.
Yeah. Like they could just go on a murdering spree and just kill a bunch of custodians if they really wanted to. If they can get that kill shot, they try to get that kill shot.
The blood games are kind of a form of penance and a motivation for the Custodes, because they remain haunted by their failure to prevent the Emperor's wounding during the Siege of Terra. And so these trials are one way that they can vow to never fail again.
Hey, Jerry, you were there when the Emperor was fighting Horus, right? Yeah. Hey, remember that time you failed? Hey, you should go on a blood game. Oh, damn it.
Who has the most successful blood games in their career?
Isn't it it's not Constantine Valdor, it's Trajan Valoris, isn't it?
It is. How many times has he succeeded in blood games?
I'm gonna say 10.
Twice.
Damn, I was close.
Trajan Valoris, Captain General, currently leader of the Adeptus Custodes, he holds the record for 2 successful blood games, which is an almost unheard of achievement.
Damn.
So multiple victories mark him as exceptionally cunning, even by custodian standards. Constantine Valdor did do blood games during the Great Crusade and the early Horus Heresy, but most of those were just like covert plots and infiltration attempts. Because at the time, early Horus Heresy, it was considered unthinkable for anyone to attack the Emperor, and Valdor was just he could see far enough ahead. Plus, he was part of the burning of Prospero, so he knew that shit was going to happen. Valdor had enough foresight to start this process earlier than the Siege of Terra.
Well, during the first phases of the Horus Heresy, thank you, brain. My brain just completely forgot what the hell the Horus Heresy was called for a minute. But during the first phases of the Horus Heresy, Space Marines couldn't even think of like drawing weapons on each other. Like they would think of sparring as it, and even that was hard for some of them to actually go all out.
Famously, there is a Ultramarine who was censured by Guilliman for daring to try draw up plans about Astartes fighting Astartes, and that guy was proven horribly correct when the word bearers assaulted Calth and the other planets of Ultramar.
Hey Guilliman, how's that practical going for you? Huh? Huh? How's that going for you? Shut up.
So the blood games are just one thing they were doing over the 10,000 years. They were also foiling countless hidden coups, secret rebellions, and assassination attempts, of which we know nothing. We just know that there were many of these things. And they played that pivotal role in ending the tyrannical rule of High Lord Goj Van Dyer during the Reign of Blood when they helped create the Sisters of Battle.
Yep.
How did they do this?
The sisters successfully took down the entirety of the Imperium.
So how did the Custodians do this?
So, this is debated because technically Beyond Those Doors has changed over time. This 6 Sisters of Battle were taken and shown the Emperor, or they talked to the Emperor, or they had a vision from the Emperor when they stepped through the doors. How some sisters became that is they probably became living saints at that point. I'm going to be honest. They probably all became living saints, like being in the presence of the Emperor and just supercharged. But the Sisters of Battle were let through the doors that guard the Emperor, but that also might not guard the... It depends where those doors actually are, because GW keeps moving them. Because do those doors lead to his throne? Do they lead to the giant staircase that then leads to his throne? Artwork changes, so we don't really know. But they did go and talk to the sisters talked to the Emperor, and then they stopped being like followers of Goj Van Dyer and decided to kill him instead. And
they did. They definitely did. They cut off his head, which ended the Reign of Blood, and founded what became the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. So the Custodians have had some pretty big impacts on things. What happens, Alexis, if you are a Custodian and you get wounded, but not so much that you can become a dreadnought, but more than is good for a bodyguard?
It's weird because they should just be able to heal it, but for some reason, some of them don't. And then they could become Eyes of the Emperor.
What are the Eyes of the Emperor?
The Eyes of the Emperor are a very, very, very select group of Custodians that sometimes go without their armor, sometimes keep their armor. I don't know which, because the one that we saw is almost naked. But they are informants, and they help the Inquisition. They help other Imperial forces to safeguard the Soul Sector and the Emperor himself, or to further their own goals.
They are an off-the-books intelligence and counter-conspiracy arm working far from Terra in the shadows of the wider Imperium. The Eyes are composed of custodians who have formally left frontline service. usually after a long and distinguished career, and are repurposed into covert roles rather than simply being retired. Basically, if you're a custodian and you've served long enough that you're done, you're tired of it, and plus you're just not as good as you used to be for whatever reason.
This grandpa, that's too damn bad.
Well, I mean, there can be wounds, there could be trauma. I mean, custodians are not gods. They're not even demigods. They're just really, really good space marines. And so we know that trauma can impact them just like it would impact a space marine.
They're demigods.
I mean, that's one way to put it. Anyway, but so instead of retiring, they become these Eyes of the Emperor, and they set out across the galaxy to perform this covert function. Their core purpose of the Eyes of the Emperor is to detect and neutralize hidden threats to the Emperor and Terra. So this is chaos cults, traitor governors, subversive administratum networks. Yeah, there's some Eyes of the Emperor that mostly deal with paperwork.
Could you imagine how efficient that guy is, though? Like, that department must be so efficient.
Well, here's the other part that's really interesting. The Eyes of the Emperor also deal with corrupt inquisitors. Now, that's interesting. Inquisitors have almost unlimited power and authority. Almost unlimited power and authority. If you're an inquisitor and a custodian, retired or not, shows up to kill you, and nobody's going to say that was a bad idea. There's literally everyone will be like, "Yep, had it coming."
Damn, you shouldn't have done that.
Right? Which I think is great. I love the idea that the Eyes of the Emperor are actually the ones making sure the Inquisition doesn't get too out of hand. Dynaman, how does a 9-foot-tall giant become a spy?
Carefully.
I'm so glad you asked.
There was also another one saying, like, how do they become? Yeah, here it is.
How the heck are 9-foot-tall guys inconspicuous? Okay, interestingly enough, a lot of places don't know the difference between a space marine and custodian. A lot of people don't know. Most people in the Imperium have never seen either one. Most people in the Imperium have never even seen Ogrins.
Yep.
They just know that they exist. So a custodian, 9 foot tall or not, could show up to a planet and hang out, as long as he's not like interacting with the Imperial commander of the planet or, high-ranking people who would know better. As long as he's dealing with people that don't know better, he can pass himself off as, I'm just a space marine, or I'm just an Ogrin, or I'm just a
mutant.
I'm just a mutant. Yeah, there are ways. Plus, they're brilliant. I should point out again, they're exceptionally intelligent. Custodes are, and cunning.
A person looks at the custodian standing there. I'm a tree. You're right. I'm gonna leave. No,
there's a theory.
Love the idea, because this comes from the Fallen, because a lot of the Fallen pretend to be Ogrins. Well, I can't say a lot. There's specifically one that said that they were an Ogrin on a planet. They were just a very intelligent Ogrin, and no one ever questioned them because they were scared of them. Because if a 9-foot-tall person speaks fluent Gothic to you and is covered in muscle, you're probably just going to be like, yes, you are. Leave.
Micah says there's a theory that that the Inquisitor in Darktide serves as an Eye of the Emperor. That's possible.
Yep.
I would like to point out this question from Hawk. Are the Eyes considered part of the 10,000, or do they replace them when they become Eyes?
This I wanted to know as well. I think they don't count as part of the 10,000 until they return.
My belief, first of all, I don't have any lore to say one way or the other. But my belief is that when you become an Eye of the Emperor, you are no longer part of the 10,000. That you have not renounced it, but you have retired from it. You are no longer good enough to be a custodian. You are an Eye of the Emperor. So in my belief, when you transition from one to the other, when you become an Eye of the Emperor, the custodians, the Adeptus Custodes, they replace you. They find someone new.
Okay. Are you going to be an Eye of the Emperor for like 25 years or like 200? Well, I was thinking about like 30 years. Oh, come on. It takes us 50 years to make another one. Oh, okay. So I'll go on for 50 years, then I'll come back. Well, then what's the point of going?
I will say it's extremely rare for Eyes of the Emperor to return and to full service. I don't believe I don't know of any, let's put it that way, who've done it.
I also don't know of any, mostly because the Eyes of the Emperor are only like one paragraph things that don't have too much lore to them. We do know for some reason the dreadnoughts don't count as part of the 10,000 either. They count as vehicles. 10,000 only counts if you are walking on your own two legs, young man. Oh, dang it.
Apparently.
We also do know that their dreadnoughts are not kept in stasis either, because they can handle the mental strain.
Ricardo Andre, my debate partner, says being an eye is retirement as they go to that role due to not being as physically competent as they were before. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So we have a super.
We do have a super chat.
I was just about to grab it.
Well, too bad I did. Boom.
Ricky Chapman, 3377. Thank you very much, sir. Didn't mention we had a custodian on our ship. Well, that would have been good context to know. He was assisting in an investigation involving a rogue inquisitor. Hey, but we were attacked by Gazgul, who killed the custodian. A player character grabbed the guardian spear and threw it to kill Makari.
Wow, there was so much happening there.
That is a hell of a lot to unpack, sir.
This is the type of like 2 sentences that GW will put in a codex, and me and Ross will lose our fucking minds at, because we're like, there are so many implications in just that.
Also, that was clearly not Makari, because Makari's too lucky to be killed by a random throw of a spear.
Also, did you know Makari knows like 5 languages? And might be a perpetual that instead of like when he dies, it's anybody who touches the banner becomes Makari, the original Makari.
We need to do an episode of Makari. That's what I'm hearing. Is we need to do an episode of Makari.
I don't think there's enough on Makari, but when we do Gazgul
no. There's I think we could definitely make it work.
All right, fair enough. We'll try.
But certainly we could talk about Makari in relation to Gazgul if we do. We should do an episode on Gazgul. So why not do both, right? Like that's
exactly.
That's kind of where you're going, I think.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure to add.
But yeah, Makari speaks fluent Gothic and can speak High Gothic. Like he counter-interrogated an Inquisitor, which is awesome.
I will remind you, he's the luckiest Grot who ever lived or ever will live. So anyway,
it's cool to see that there might be perpetuals and other species that aren't just humans and Eldar.
True. So we talked about the Blood Games, talked about the Eyes of the Emperor, we talked about the 10,000. That takes us through up to the era Indomitus, which is the current era of 40k.
Oh, good. We skipped the Beast of Rises series.
I mean, I don't think that they did anything that important during the Beast of Rises.
They killed, I think, one of the beasts, and that was it.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
You don't have to. No one cares. It's the Beast of Rises series. It's bad. Skip it.
So, Era Indomitus, the birth of the Great Rift and the resurrection of Guilliman. This is where we get a dramatic change. After 10,000 years of isolation, the Custodes cast off their mourning cloaks and took to the stars once more. They fought at the Lion's Gate, which was a vast coronate demon horde assaulted it, led by Guilliman and Trajan Valoris. The Custodes, Ultramarines, Sisters of Silence, all working together, repelled the attack and killed no less than 8 bloodthirsters.
Yep, they killed the 8 bloodthirsters that would eventually resummon Angron.
Got a comment here from Ricardo Andre. Says, High Gothic is just Terran Gothic, to be fair. Low Gothic is every other language of the Imperium, but due to a common root, they are generally mutually intelligible, so it isn't that surprising. Terran Gothic is High Gothic? Do you mean Latin? I'm not sure what you mean here, but it's he's largely, in the broad sense, he's not wrong about what he's talking about here. And we have a question from Lenny. He says, what about all the different castes among the Custodes? You're talking about the shield companies, I believe, and we are going to talk about those. But I just wanted to get through the historical stuff first.
Yeah.
So after, go ahead.
Also, during that battle that you were just talking about, that's when the Custodes first saw how the Grey Knights fight on battlefields.
And Lord Vorden points out that 2,000 custodians died at the Battle of Lion's Gate, which is the biggest loss since the Heresy.
Yep.
All right. So then after the Battle of the Lion's Gate, we have the Indomitus Crusade. The Custodians went with Guilliman across the galaxy. Usually they were heralds delivering the Primaris Space Marines and the technology that accompanies them to the existing chapters. And they did this because, as I pointed out earlier in the show, when a custodian shows up, every Space Marine chapter is like, oh, what can we do to help you, sir? Because you are a direct representation of the Emperor.
Hey, here's your order. You need to sign here, please. Okay. Yep. Cool. All right. Make sure you are you leaving a tip? No.
Five stars on DoorDash, please.
No 5 stars. Wow. The flesh tears. We don't even want this. We didn't order it.
And
we'll still take it.
Ever since then, they have adopted a doctrine of far more offensive actions, launching preemptive strikes against threats to Terra before they can materialize. They are guided by alpha-level astropaths and doomscryers within the Imperial Palace. These are big minds. These are like the human equivalent of Farseers, although probably not as good as Farseers. But still, they have some talent in reading the future and determining where threats may arise. Skatari Boy. Thank you very much, Skatari Boy. He says, is there a lore reason that all of the explicitly female custodians we've heard of so far seem insane in a good way?
No, that is a representation of custodians.
They're just that crazy.
They are crazy. They look down on Space Marines because they view Space Marines as one step away from trying to kill the Emperor. So they're very, very... They keep the Space Marines at arm's length. Though I would love to see their interaction with the Sisters of Battle. Like, it has to be a little bit nicer than the Space Marines, right?
Well, they gave a spear to the new High Lord of Terra, who's the Abbess Sanctorum, remember?
Yeah, so they must like them a bit.
They seem to get along with them just fine. Okay, so
you guys are dumb and stupid. These chicks, yeah, we like them. They're cool.
Lenny asks about the different casts, and I was going to get into that now. The tactical casts of the Custodians are called chambers, not shield companies. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The chambers of the Custodians. We talked about one already, which is the Hetarian Guard. Alexis, who's the Hetarian Guard?
Oh, sorry, I was reading another question. The Hetarian Guard.
Yep.
I will admit the only one I do know is the Shadow Keepers.
All right, the Hetarian Guard are the 300 that maintain the eternal vigil at the Golden Throne. Their armor is said to be blackened by the Emperor's psychic emanations, but they have black armor. That's the Hetarian Guard.
There is a cool quote from them that I do know. And that was one of them speaking to Guilliman or somebody else. I think it was one of them. But Guilliman asks a custodian if his father is a god. And the custodian response is, I have stood beside the Emperor for so long that God and godlike are indistinguishable.
Good quote.
Yeah, granted that's not the exact quote, but yeah.
Lord Vorden points out that the Hetarian Guard are the inner circle. That's a good way to think of it. They are the elite of the elite of the elite. They're also called the Companions, the Hetarian Guard. There's the Hykanatoi, which are the main infantry, the core infantry, the main force of the Custodians. These are the guys that are equipped with Guardian Spears, which Alexis is going to talk about shortly. There's the Theranatoi, which are the heavy assault guys. This is your Terminators, Sagittarium guards. They wield Adrathic weapons, which Alexis is going to talk about shortly. There's the Cataphractoi. These are your mobile forces, your jet bike riders, your gunship crews, rapid assault. That's their whole thing. There's the Epheroi, which are these are the infiltration and subterfuge specialists. When you are when you're undergoing a blood game, you're part of the Epheroi. There's the Moratoi, the honored dead, and these are the Custodians that are interred within dreadnought chassis. There's the Dankanatoi, which is the tank and war machine crews. And then there's the Eyes of the Emperor, which we've already discussed. So why don't you talk about Adrathic weapons and Guardian spears?
I do want to get to that. I just want to answer this really quickly. Skitari Boy states, okay, but one of them tried to nuke the Emperor in a blood game. That can't be normal custodian behavior. You're right. She actually failed way before she got close to the Emperor. She was actually worse than most custodians. Just want to point that out. A different custodian would have gotten that on Terra at least. And yes, that is considered normal behavior for a custodian during a blood game. This is absolutely normal.
No holds barred.
Her failing that early, though, is like, that kind of sucked. She got found out real quick. So I just wanted to mention that really quickly. There are a ton of different weapons, and I'm going to try to go through a few of them really quickly. So the most famous of their weapons is the Guardian Spear, which has 3 distinct looks because all custodian weapons are a work of art and made by them and maintained by them. And it's like this beautiful work of art. Each Guardian Spear is worth more than like a planet. I don't know if that's exactly true, but they are expensive weapons. I know their armor is worth more than a planet. It's worth more than all of its tithes, which is kind of crazy. But a Guardian Spear is extremely good. It's technically not a spear, it's a halberd. And I'm gonna bitch about this for a second because spear.
I know. I'm letting you have the floor.
So, as a spear fighter, custodians don't fight as if they're using a spear. They're never thrusting it like a spear would or trying to get around things like you would with a spear. I actively fight with a spear a lot. I fight on it 2 times a week. Now we're fighting on Saturdays as well. But it is a halberd. It's not a... Okay, it's technically a glaive or a nagato. The Japanese weapon that has the sword on the stick.
Naginata,
yeah. So it's not a spear, is my major thing. As a weapon itself, it is very difficult to master. And it takes custodians considerably a very long time to master it. They should be using different weapons. They should be using better weapons, to be honest. They should have shoulder-mounted weapons as well, but they don't. I don't know why, but, they don't. So the basic weapon that they have is the Custodian Spear. It is a bolt-style weapon, but the bolts that it fires are different than the Astartes bolt. They are the same caliber, but something is different about them and how they fire. Typically,
the bolt weapons are superior on the Guardian weapons. They are better than regular bolters.
Yes, they're more reliable. So some Guardian Spears have the trigger for them to shoot it like they would with just a trigger. Some of them are MIU'd, so they can spin them around and as they're thinking, fire it so that they can hit like 3 to 4 different enemies as they're fighting. That is the way more effective version of the Guardian Spear and probably given to something like the Wardens instead of your typical, as weird as it is, your standard Custodian. Granted, their standard Custodian is a weird thing to say here. The next thing that is in the same vein as the weapon, but has a correct name, is the Guardian Axe.
I would like to point out a couple of comments here. We got one from Neglectful asking glaive ? And we got
technically yes.
And we got one from Druzina Quaichi who says it's closer to a bardiche. Well, I will say this as a old school D&D guy. When you start throwing around terms like glaive and bardiche, I start to ask, how about Gisarmi? How about a glaive Gisarmi? How about a Bohemian ear spoon? If you remember that one from the first edition, from the early advanced Dungeons and Dragons manuals, they had every single type of polearm listed, and so you guys are bringing back some memories.
But yeah, it is closer to a glaive, and a glaive is more known than a poleaxe. Sorry, my bad. But it is not a spear, is what I'm trying to get at. It's too fancy to be a spear. A spear is a knife on a stick, and it's one of the most simple weapons that you can think of. The next weapon that they have is the Guardian Axe. This thing's actually an axe. It looks kind of like a Dane axe. It is fine. I have no complaints over it, but it does have a spearhead at the front, which means that it's not technically an axe. Just want to point that out. It's got the spear point at the front, and then it goes like this, and then it has the axe underneath, which, guess what? It's not an axe anymore. It's a different style of polearm. But I digress. More devastating, similar build, similar power field to that of a Thunderhammer, which it explodes on impact. So when it hits into something, it then explodes into it. So it tends to blow things up as it's going through them, which power weapons are really awesome in 40k because they push apart molecules. I am going to say they push apart molecules and not what GW says where they cut molecules, because that's dangerous. But they push apart molecules, and then the weight of the actual weapon itself pushes the weapon all the way through. So if they were to hit something like a Mark I plasma sword, which is, if you guys don't know, a joke on a lightsaber from 40k, it'll go right through it and kill the person behind it. The power field does protect it from other styles of weapons similar and will crush through most weapons. The paired weapon along with the Guardian Axe is something called the Beltus Grenade Launcher, or however you want to say this. I have no idea how it's actually pronounced, but I always pronounce it that way. I always actually just pronounce it the Grenade Launcher. It is a wrist-mounted grenade launcher that fires in bursts and is mostly used for suppressing enemies so that they can come in with the axe and just deal with them. The axe is actually way better of a weapon for them than the Guardian Spear in terms of fighting, as because of their physical size and strength and speed, you would want the axe over the spear. Yeah, as somebody that has a Dane axe, like I have my Dane axe and my spear just sitting over in the corner of my room. So I actively fight with those. If I was a little bit stronger, I'd be using the Dane axe more, but I like the speed of the spear. Okay, let's move on to
Adrathic weapons, please. What are Adrathic weapons?
Oh my god, isn't that their guns? No, that's their vehicle weapons.
Well,
they are.
I think it's both.
I'm only seeing them on their vehicles. Yeah, these are infantry weapons, vehicle weapons.
So they are directed energy disintegration weapons. They are an ancient class of Dark Age of technology guns. Notably, only the Legio Custodes or the Adeptus Custodes use them. I think maybe there might be someone else who uses one, but I think it's mostly the Custodians.
I found the one. It's the Adrastic bolt caliber, which is used by the Custodians, and it's a very awkward bolt weapon that just looks like an Age of Sigmar miniature without the crossbow.
So the Adrathic weapons, this disintegration beam is highly unstable. It severs the internal bonds of matter, causing the target's material structure to unravel. Rather than simply vaporize or explode, they just fall apart, which is really gross. And kind of it reminds me of the Necron Gauss flayers a little bit.
So I have a whole theory about that.
Okay.
I think that the Catan that the Emperor made the bargain with when he entombed him on Mars got the plans for that because they were already making that with the Necrons, which were Necron tier, then Necrons then went into their sleep at the time. I think the Void Dragon gave the Emperor that information on make these types of weapons.
Well,
that's a theory.
Adrathic weapons are barely understood even by the Mechanicus. It's essentially a disintegrator ray, and disintegrators, by the way, were far more common in the Heresy era. They almost were entirely wiped out during the Heresy because they were so dangerous. These things were awful. And Adrathics are even better than
they're terrible intended. They're terrible in 3rd edition Heresy.
Lore-wise, Adrathic weapons are even more dangerous than your standard disintegration beams that the Astartes had. So that's the Adrathic weapons. And we now have this question. I had a question up here from our friend from Twitch. Where is that guy?
I do want to talk about
Dino Man. Dino Man is asking about the Aquiline Shield. What about the Aquiline Shield? These are the ones that go out and guard someone destined for greatness, he asks.
I love these guys because they will just protect some kid. Like, they will stop, protect some kid, and be like, "You're going to be great one day," and then leave and never tell that kid anything, but always be around to protect them until they become something like Caiaphas Cain.
So the the Aquiline shield is what's called a shield host, not a. We talked about the chambers, right? The chambers are the big divisions. The shield hosts. So a formation of custodians is called a shield company, which is usually about 30 to 40 custodians. Okay. Larger formations than that are called shield hosts. These are assembled for major threats. They can number from dozens to hundreds of custodians. The Shadow Keepers are one of the shield hosts. Would you like to talk about the Shadow Keepers?
They're just really cool, and they wear black armor.
What do they do?
That's just dope. For as far as I know, they only protect the soul sector, and that's it.
So the Shadow Keepers are the jailers. They guard the dark cells beneath the Imperial Palace. The dark cells are where ancient horrors, forbidden prisoners, the worst of the worst, that's where they're kept. And the ones that guard them are the Shadow Keepers. They're led by guys called Lock Wardens. And Lock Wardens are also the ones who hunt down any of these things that escape. They're the equivalent of the U.S. Marshals, basically.
I think a couple of them are after Cypher at the moment.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me. Then there's the Aquiline Shield. Their whole deal is they protect individuals that are deemed vital to the Emperor's interests. This could be High Lords of Terra. This can be generals. This could be, anyone, including a kid, if they think that the kid is vital to the Emperor's interest for whatever reason. And they do this until their ward's usefulness ends. And that usefulness ending is kind of up to the custodian to determine. There's also the Solar Watch. These are the ones that I talked about being scattered throughout the solar system. They are castellans of the solar system's outer defenses. They conduct what are called Talon sorties, which are kind of like blood games. And then there's the Emissaries Imperatus. These are the heralds, the ones that are sent out to be an emissary of the Emperor. These are the ones that deliver the Primaris technology. And then there's the Dread Host. Do you know about the Dread Host?
I know that Alexis? They're dreadful.
Okay. So the Dread Host, this is actually my favorite one. They are instruments of overwhelming annihilation. And they operate from 3 Custodes void ships, which I think is really interesting. Yeah, the Custodians have capital ships.
I know that they have ships, and I know that the ships are really hard to detect. But yeah, I don't know the size of their ships. I know that the only one from Battlefleet Gothic.
As far as I'm aware, we've never had rules for them. So anyway, they have very specific names, these ships. They're called the Moirides, which I think is really neat.
What are these?
The Moirides, right? Okay, so the Dread Host, they're characterized as the most aggressive and proactively deployed formation. Their primary role is to deliver overwhelming, exemplary punishment against major threats to the Sol region, the Sol sector, the Sol system, or the Segmentum Solar, which is even bigger region around Sol. They are the principal external striking arm of the Custodians. And they specialize in ending campaigns decisively. Invasions, rebellions, large Xenos incursions are all targeted for total destruction rather than limited intervention.
I'm just imagining like the Terminators of a squad like teleport in to do their final attack against something, and the Custodians are just cleaning the blood off of their weapons like, oh, you guys finally made it. Okay, cool. You guys can clean up. Okay, bye. And then you just leave.
The Dread Host is described as a massive shield host, numbering in the hundreds of Custodians. So that's interesting. The 3 ancient Custodian battleships are collectively known as the Moirides, which allow them to rapidly project force. A Custodian battleship, I would love to see rules for that.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be strong. Like, So it's a battleship, so it's not the biggest class of ship, but it's still really big and powerful.
If you want to know
I
more about, go ahead.
I want to know what weapons it has. Like, does the big question is, though, does it have a Nova cannon? If it has a Nova cannon, I love it. If it has a ramming prow, I love it. If it doesn't, it might not be a great ship. But it might be, if it's built like an Imperial Navy ship, then I still love it.
Ricardo Andre points out it's Necron level of power. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if they could fight Necrons effectively, because again, Necrons are just basically submarines when it comes to the otherwise Age of Sail type battles in space.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. They'd probably put up a hell of a fight. I think I'd say that. So if you want to know more about the Dread Host, check out the Dawn of Fire novels. These guys are a big part of that. There's a shield captain called Tribune named Maldivar Colquan, who is part of the Dread Host in those books. There usually is the usual deployment of the Dread Host is mass teleportation of Terminators. The Alaris Terminators. They just huge force of Terminators showing up out of nowhere, all armored in gold. It makes you wonder.
Terminators are so beautiful.
I know, they look great, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
They had their own formation in 9th edition, and they had their own warlord trait in 9th edition, which was called the All-Seeing Annihilator, which I love.
They have a stratagem right now that lets you deep strike them and then split them into individual units of one. Wow. It's so cool. There was a question that I wanted to answer really quickly. Somebody asked, Rush 21129 asked, who are the custodians with the two-handed bolt rifles? And that's the Adrastus bolt caliber that they're carrying. And it's carried by the... Oh my god, I'm going to try this. The Sagittarium Guard?
Sagittarium, yeah.
Yeah, them. That's them. Custodian names give me a headache, and they massively trigger my dyslexia, so I apologize. But yeah, it's a bolt weapon that shoots disintegrator rounds, which is horrifying.
To go back really quick, the last thing I want to say about the shield host is the Solar Watch. I talked about the Talon sorties. These are preemptive strikes. These are sudden operations against any threat to the Sol system. Basically, their whole job, the Talon sorties, is just to go right out, hit something, and go right back. And I said they were kind of like blood games. I misspoke. They're not blood games. They're their own thing. The Talon sortie is the strategy or tactic, if you will, of the Solar Watch. So one of the standard actions like this is the Solar Watch teleported aboard a growing Orc warfleet that had just completed a long siege, and they planted vortex implosion charges throughout the capital ships and then withdrew before the Orcs could pursue. And they blew up the whole fleet just like that. So
yeah, that'll do it.
That'll do it. The Solar Watch. These are if you're curious about the Solar Watch's colors, they are the gold armor but have white and red markings. All right, so that is the majority of what we know about. We want to talk about their armor.
The gold armor that gives them a 2-up save at no matter what.
Aramite, a golden alloy far superior to ceramite. Each suit is individually crafted, maintained across centuries or millennia, and incorporates refraction fields, iron halos, and other advanced defensive technologies. These guys are the most well-protected warriors in the Imperium on an individual level.
Yeah, I really wish like writers would remember that force fields exist in 40K, because it's like, how did the World Eater stick their hand through the Custodian? How did he get through the
Aramite,
the force field?
Well,
like
everything, yeah.
Like my house rule, our house rule, and I think you like this when we talked about it, is that force fields only work at a certain range and velocity. Where if somebody grapples somebody, it doesn't trigger the force field, but if somebody throws like a super fast punch, it triggers the force field.
Well, that's speculation. I don't know for sure, but it is based on Dune, and that's what I was saying. Like the Dune,
yeah,
the way that shields work in Dune is like that. And I was just kind of suggesting, I think that's maybe where they're coming from with the way that their force fields work.
I also just think that writers forget about force fields.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just gonna put this out there. The only time I remember a force field activating and being significant to the story is when the brides of the Emperor, witness Gorge Van Dyer getting shot and protected by his force field.
His Rosarius. Yeah.
Yep.
We got a couple of super chats. We got Scutari Boy here who says, thank you, Scutari Boy, by the way. Warhammer sure has a lot of guns that disintegrate targets. Yes, it does.
Okay, so weirdly, yes, it does, but also no, it doesn't, because of scale. So there's a lot of guns that do this, but you won't encounter a lot of them. The most common is the Necron's vacuum cleaner, which is the God's Flare, which beams, pulls apart molecules, and then used to suck it back into the gun so that it can make more ammunition for its gun, which was hilarious because it was a space vacuum cleaner. And then they retconned that, and now it just destabilizes molecules and causes disintegration.
Yeah, but it's like really slow and really, it's like
it's painful.
It's layer by layer. It's not like all at once.
Yeah.
And I think we should do a show. I think one of our Wednesday shows should be like, what are the most deadliest weapons in all of 40K? Because we could talk about wraith cannons, we could talk about disintegrators, we could talk about all kinds of stuff.
Nova cannons,
obviously, and the weaponry of the Speranza. The Speranza is a particular Arc Mechanicus, which is a Mechanicum capital ship, and the Speranza's weapons are just insane, ludicrous. Go look it up on Lexicanum sometime. It's wild what that ship can do.
Yeah.
All right, so Scutari Boy, thank you for pointing that out. And yeah, we would like to.
There actually are a lot of weapons that disintegrate.
To be clear, wraith cannons do not disintegrate, but it's kind of a moot point because what they actually do is just as bad. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on. We've got Ice Veins 88. Thank you, Ice Veins. Appreciate you. Do you believe the Emperor would have culled the Custodes, or at least some, like he planned with the Space Marines, and possibly some Primarchs, if the heresy never happened?
So my short answer is absolutely not. As weird as it is, the Emperor has always been like really close with his Custodians. Even the Custodians, like Constantine Valdor, actually knew about the eventual purge of the Primarchs. Granted, it wasn't supposed to be that many.
So my answer to this is very similar to Alexis's. I don't think he would have called the Custodes because they are his companions, his closest companions. There's, in fact, many theories to suggest that he actually prefers them to the Primarchs, and or that the Custodes are jealous of the Primarchs because they got so much of the Emperor's attention. So it's it is certainly implied that the plan was to call the Space Marines just like they called the Thunder Warriors, and that it is implied that the Primarchs were meant to be regional governors throughout the galaxy. Obviously, some of them were called. At least two Primarchs that we know of were called. So definitely Primarchs have been called. Custodians, as far as we know, have never been called, and their loyalty to the Emperor is so deep that there are theories that suggest that they don't even have free will of their own.
I like the idea that they don't have free will. Because even when they were turned against the Emperor, they fought against it. So, that's there.
Yeah, well, this would be a good time, I think, to transition into some of these theories and weird lore bits, because there are quite a few.
Yeah, how dare they retcon my naked men to put armor on them?
Alexis, how are Custodians named?
After crazy deeds that they do. Each Custodian gains an additional name for a deed that they've done. A Custodian can have upwards of 1,000 names. So, yeah, they do a lot of stuff.
Their name grows longer throughout their life. It functions like an autobiography. Each new element is formally awarded by the Masters of the First Circle, which are the heads, the heads of the shield hosts, the they're not Trajan Valoris, but they're right underneath him. And so they award these as a significant life event, usually a blood game victory or combat against a particular foe, things like that. There's a novel called Blood Games, and it details that one custodian, his name was Taramachian, and it was described the occupation of his gene source bloodline, his organic birthplace, the house of his formative study, where he first learned weapons. His full name is like 17 words.
Can you say that name again?
Taramachian?
Yeah, that is flat out just a bionicle.
The longest serving custodians have names so immense that it would take considerable time to recite them in full. So they use shortened forms for everyday conversation.
We do have a super chat here.
Is it? Oh,
yes.
All right.
Because it says cheer at the end. I found out that if it says cheer at the end, it's a super chat.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Chap. We appreciate your support. He says, what do you think the Custodians are missing and what do they need, both in terms of lore and on the tabletop?
Okay. So this, on terms of tabletop, they need to get the hell off of my tables. I hate them. I'm joking. I am salty because they're one of the best armies in the game right now, and they, for some reason, keep dodging nerfs. I don't know why. It's like the Custodian players all know, and they're just like, okay, stop playing Custodes right now, switch to another army that's difficult for us, and then go back to playing Custodes so we don't get nerfed. I know what they're up to. I can see that. But jokes aside, they are missing like an anti-tank unit, a dedicated long-range anti-tank unit that isn't a dreadnought. It is a vehicle that actually has weapons that are strength 12 to deal with tanks, because they don't really have that in good supply right now. They do have the Land Raider, which the Land Raider's doing work. I will give it that, but yeah, I would say they're missing like some type of rapid assault vehicle. For the actual tabletop, they also need Sisters of Silence. That's just going to be made. The sisters need to be made better. They kind of just are action monkeys right now. I want them to have like actual rules that make them good in combat. Like they should have 3 attacks. They should have fights first to represent that they are faster than Space Marines for some reason, because they, in every edition of Horus Heresy, for some reason they were always faster than Space Marines. I think it's mostly a balancing thing, because they would hit a Space Marine, kill it, or they would get hit by Space Marines and die. They were very much glass cannons, which I'm okay with. So that's what I would say that they're missing, is more sister support. More sister units would be cool too. Like give them their 30k equivalent units from 2nd edition. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, I'm not sure that they are missing anything or need anything technically, because again, they are bodyguards and they're not meant to be a force that you see on the battlefield very often. But if you were to look at it from that perspective, and I think you are, and I think a lot of people who really like the Custodes want to see them do more on the battlefield. So first of all, some kind of knight equivalent, as Hawk points out, would be pretty cool. I would love to see personally, the dreadnoughts that they have are kind of based on the one from the Heresy era.
They have a
what's that called? What's that called? The chassis.
They have a Contemptor dreadnought.
Contemptors. Thank you.
They technically have a Saturnine stylish dreadnought with the Telemon.
I'm not finished yet with the dreadnought though. Their current dreadnoughts are based on Contemptors. What I'd really like to see is a Leviathan style dreadnought for the Custodians.
Ooh. Yeah, I could see that.
And that could fill the role of a knight type unit.
And you could have it with 4 accelerator blaze cannons would be really cool.
Blaze cannons. I mean, those sound really fun, but I live in Colorado where that's legal. So, what can I say?
That's the joke.
So good question. Thank you, Professor Schaap.
Yep.
Also, Hawk pointed out that sorry, I'm looking for it really quick here. He pointed out that the cheer, here we go. He says the cheer can appear anywhere in the message, but we ask that people put the bits at the end to make the cheer stand out if you want.
Oh, yeah, because there is another one by Dino Man I think I missed.
Oh, do we need? Okay, why don't you look for that one and I'll read the new one.
Yeah. Nope, that's not it.
So Petrus Hypatus, thank you very much, Petrus Hypatus. He says, are there custodians in the city of dust? Okay, I need to refresh myself really quick on the city of dust.
Okay, so it's the immortals he was talking about.
Okay, so this is a deliberately metaphysical place. This is so the city of dust is basically it's kind of 40K's version of Sartosa, if you're familiar with Sartosa, which is the in the Cthulhu mythos. Sartosa is a city that exists outside of our reality where the Yellow King resides. So the city, So the city of dust is a reflection, is kind of a version of that. It's a mysterious cityscape that exists in or overlaps with the warp, which is where being called the King in Yellow resides. And we all the current thinking is that the King in Yellow is actually Constantine Valdor, the original Captain General of the Custodes. So Petrus is he's commenting. His comment is related to that theory that Constantine Valdor is the King in Yellow, which would put him in the city of dust.
I mean, yeah, I want it to be too. Also, I did find the comment. I'm not sure if we read this one.
Okay. Dynaman 95 says, fun history fact. Both the Persian Immortals and the Inca Royal Bodyguard are said to have 10,000 members. Yeah, I'm sure this is I'm sure Games Workshop knew about that. But yeah, good point. Good shout. I'm glad you brought it up because I did not know that. And I think it's super cool that those things are part of the history.
Yeah, I only knew about the Persian Immortals. But I didn't know about the Incas. That's actually really cool. I'm gonna look that up.
So here's another fun one for you guys. Oh, wait, sorry. Hawk's got a from Dynaman. Okay, we did cover that one.
Yeah,
okay.
I did. But thank you, Hawk. You're the best.
Hawk is doing work. We appreciate you, buddy. So we were talking about how the true golden throne may not actually be the true golden throne, right?
Yes.
In the Carrion Lord of the Imperium, which we talked about earlier, that's the book by the story by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. And he says that in that story, he says that the golden throne that most of the Imperium venerates, the iconic image of the skeletal emperor seated upon a mighty techno-arcane throne, that's a decoy, according to this story. It is described as a graven image of the immortal emperor, a skull-faced warlock on a mighty throne, eternally alive on the edge of death, imposing in his majesty. But according to the story, behind this public-facing image, there is a secret door that opens only to droplets of a tribune's blood. So a member of the 10,000 has to bleed to open this lock. The locks take over an hour to unlock using this method. And inside, the walls of the true throne chamber take on an unsettling organic form, reminiscent of a spine. The real emperor is described as something far more pitiful and alien than the majestic image that he's depicted as in the books, tangled in wires that resemble entrails, connected to blood bags, nutrient packets, and rhythmic life support machines, seated on something that pales in comparison to the majestic concept of a throne, but is much more closely resembling like an iron lung or some sort of life support device. The Custodes, according to the story, have kept this horrifying truth hidden, knowing that the Imperium's faith would collapse if the populace ever saw the reality.
I think I know the exact picture that Aaron Dembski-Bowden's idea for that is. Yeah, okay. I gotta open these two pictures really quickly. Because both of these are very important to talking about the Custodes. Oh my god, why is the picture that small? God damn it. I hate when you look at a picture, you get the link, and then like the picture's big, and then you open it in a separate tab and it's tiny.
Well, you can, when you're doing your search, you can actually tell it to pick a certain size of picture.
Yeah.
I know. While you're doing that, I'll read a super chat from Ricardo Andre, my debate partner. Thank you, Ricardo Andre. Appreciate you, buddy. He says, idea. Something happens in the heresy that leads Kurz plus Perturabo plus Alfarius to set up a third state. It survives until 40K. How would that change the setting?
Oh,
Wow. Okay, that's not a small question at all. Conrad Kurz, Perturabo, and Alfarius working together. That's terrifying. To set up a third state. I assume you're saying a third state from the Imperium and the Imperium Secundus that Gilliman set up with Sanguinius and the Lion. Sort of a reflection of the Imperium Secundus is what it sounds like you're talking about here, which is kind of interesting. It would be a good what if, I think. How would it change the setting? Well, any empire set up by 3 Primarchs is going to be formidable. Like, Gilliman is, of course, like the best empire builder, but Conrad Kurz and Perturabo and Alfarius are all very intelligent, very smart, and they have a lot of resources between the 3 of them, and especially Heresy era, so they have all their resources that a legion would have, not just a chapter.
And they have all the Imperial armies following them.
Right. Not to mention Mechanicus support or Mechanicum support, not to mention Imperialist militia. Yeah, this is a serious. So an Imperium Tertius, I think is what we would call this.
Yep.
Imperium Tertius. Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. You know what? I'll tell you what. You super chatted it, so I will add it to the list of what ifs, and we will add that to our polls to see if people are interested to hear more about that, because that's a really cool idea. Now, why don't you take over talking while I write that down?
This is the image of the Emperor from Rogue Trader, and it's the Emperor very much damaged. Notice how he doesn't have a bionic eye.
Or a body.
Yeah, there's no body. Well, there's like lower torso, but you can see that you can actually see where the hand pierced him. You can see that he still has both his arms, which is important because he loses those later on. And you can see that he's actually hooked up to actual life support, and he looks like an undead. Like, this looks like the Emperor dying. And I love this. And the only ones, like, you can see the Custodes blocking him and everything. Also, this is the first look at the black armored Custodians. I just wanted to point that out, that it's really cool that they have the black armor and everything. We can't see if they're wearing the loincloths, unfortunately. And then the other image is this one. This one I absolutely love. This is my favorite version of the Emperor himself.
Looks like a Geiger version. There's very organic.
It's very organic, and it looks like a demon. It looks like a monster. Like, if this is what the Imperium was worshiping, they would lose their minds. This is the one that I think is the true Emperor. Also, if you notice, both of these have this style of connective piece to the bottom of him. The rounded, like, egg shape that goes up to him. And then half his stomach is exposed. You can see all the wires and everything pumped into him to try to keep his body alive. You see that his arms are just gone. His armor is gone. I love these 2 images of the Emperor, because we're so used to the Emperor sitting upon the golden throne with his sword stretched across him, which, of course, Gilliman now has. And the sword magically transformed into a different sword, but we're not going to talk about that. But I love the idea that skeleton, that giant skeleton, that like 3 to 5 meter tall skeleton guarded by 2 Warhound Titans is not the Emperor. I think that it is not the Emperor. I think this thingy, this right here, is the Emperor. I think this is what the Emperor looks like.
Well, we should
just a rotting corpse.
We should do an episode on the Emperor. I would love to do.
I'd
love to get. Yes. I want to get Vera involved in that one. So we were talking about the nuclear weapon, and I want to clarify what that was. The blood game that involved the nuclear weapon. So one of the blood games, a custodian named Kaladi Teroya Kesh she commandeered a Custodes vessel and almost teleported a cyclonic torpedo into the throne room.
Sorry, a little bit bigger than a nuke.
Well, no, I mean, it's fair. I mean, like the easiest way to get it across is to say a nuke, right?
Yeah.
Because cyclonic torpedoes are planet-killing weapons. They're capable of rendering entire worlds uninhabitable. So the fact that this is considered acceptable as a Blood Games tactic underscores just how seriously they take testing their own defenses. Nothing is off limits as long as the exercise reveals genuine vulnerabilities.
Now, again, I do want to add that if she did teleport that aboard, like into or on Terra, she then would not have detonated it. The game would have been considered a success for her, and then the Custodians would have been like, "Oh, dang it!"
Yeah.
We do have a super chat here.
Dinoman 95. Another potential mental image of the Emperor is the Master from Fallout. I think you mean Fallout 1. But yes, the Master from Fallout is that's an interesting idea for sure. Was the Master not in 1 instead of 2? Am I? It's been a long time since I played 1 and 2.
I think it's 1.
So, but yeah, that's
crazy.
No, but that's a good shout, Dinoman. The Master is also a. Anyway, so that is the thing about the nuke.
And just to clarify this really quickly, there are nuclear warheads in Warhammer 40K. The Death Strike missile from the Imperial Guard does fire a nuclear warhead, and Reaver Titans and bigger Titans can be armed with a plethora of nuclear warheads on their shoulder-mounted weaponry. They are uncommon because they're considered destroyer weapons, and Gilliman doesn't like them because they leave too much damage to the environment, so the planet becomes uninhabitable for the Imperium. So it's more of a, we use the nuke on an enemy. God damn it, now we can't use this planet for like 20 years.
Vulcan was hit by a nuke during the Isstvan 5 atrocity.
Yep.
The drop site massacre. Sorry.
He got better.
Yeah. So let's do the super chat from Skitari Boy. Oh, it's Kovu. Skitari Boy says, what if suggestion? Big E does the correct thing and makes the Imperium subservient to Mars. Why, yes, I am biased. How could you tell? Skitari Boy saying that the Emperor should have been subservient to Mars. Okay. Fascinating idea. I'm going to add that one to the list as well because that's really cool.
I know how I would do this. So when the Emperor went to Mars, he instead just took over Mars instead of Earth.
Right.
And then made Mars like the epicenter instead of Earth.
All right. That one's written down, Skitari Boy. Thank you very much. And good idea. So
I like that one a lot.
Here's a fun one. Did you know that there is a custodian who essentially has a demon sword shoved inside of him?
Yeah, isn't that Dracnian?
It's not Dracnian.
Oh, it's a different. Sorry, demonic swords getting stabbed into custodians happened twice.
So this is part of Master of Mankind, and the demon Dracnian, the echo of the first murder, a being born from the very first act of murder in human history. So it is Dracnian. I'm sorry, I was wrong.
I told you it was Dracnian.
That's right. So after the Emperor defeated Dracnian, the demon boasted that suns would burn out before it could be destroyed. Yep. So the Emperor was like, okay, fine. He forcibly collapsed the demon into the form of a sword and then stabbed the blade directly into the body of his loyal custodian tribune named Ra Endymion.
Yep.
So the first time Dracnian was used as a sword was by the Emperor to stab a Custodes.
Instead of just handing it to him like a normal person.
And the demon sword painfully was absorbed into the body of the custodian, and the Emperor looks at him and says, run.
Yep.
So Ra Endymion just runs away, flees into the webway, and was never seen again.
Which is weird because we know that eventually he dies to Abaddon, and Abaddon takes Dracnian as his own.
Yeah, we do know that the Dracnian did resurface in the hands of Abaddon, who was, according to lore, was led to it by a mysterious golden figure.
Yep. I still have a huge theory about Abaddon actually being the being that must kill the Emperor and is guided by Malkador to kill the Emperor so the Emperor revives. That's my crazy theory.
It's quite possible. Here's another fun one. Constantine Valdor's signature weapon is called the Apollonian Spear. Do you know much about this?
I know that its nickname is the Appalachian Spear.
So the Apollonian Spear was forged personally by the Emperor, along with another sister weapon called the Dionysian Spear. Now,
why do these names sound really familiar?
The Apollonian Spear was given to Valdor. Who received the Dionysian Spear?
Why? I feel like I should know this because it's not Jenny to Crawl, who would have been awesome with it.
It has another name.
What's the other name?
The Wolf Spear.
Oh yeah, it's the weapon designed to destroy Horus.
Well, it was given to Layman Russ, which is why it's called the Wolf Spear.
Yep.
So Layman Russ has the Dionysian Spear. But the Apollonian Spear, what we know about this, it has a unique metaphysical property. When its blade strikes a target, it reveals their complete truth to the wielder. Their feelings, their memories, their desires, their secrets, their imperfections, all of their weaknesses become known. Supposedly, the Emperor gave Valdor this weapon because he was concerned that Valdor was becoming too cold-blooded.
God damn.
And he wanted to give his restless soul a way to slake his appetite for knowledge by killing things. Some people believe that the deeper purpose was to allow Valdor to eventually use the spear on the Emperor himself, to absorb his wishes and his knowledge and his secrets.
I can see that.
The spear also seemed capable of showing the future of its targets, even reading the truth of inanimate objects. Valdor thrust it into the deck of the vengeful spirit itself to locate his position.
Ooh, that's some magic shit, and I love it.
Right? And after the heresy, Valdor disappeared, which we think he's the King in Yellow. And he left the spear on Terra, where it's guarded by the Custodians as a relic, wielded only by their most prodigious heroes in desperate times.
Damn,
so isn't that wild?
Really cool.
Isn't that it's a soul reading spear? That's crazy.
Man, could you imagine if that was the spear given to Morphin Vol?
Right? Well, she got a spear-like weapon, so maybe.
She did get a Guardian Spear that's way different than every other Guardian Spear in existence. But then again, the Guardian Spear, even though Games Workshop makes models and shows the Guardian Spear, remember when it comes to the Custodians, they don't have a standard template construct for their weapons. Their weapons are made as guidelines and then made on Terra. Like, they're not made on Mars, which is cool. They're Terran technology. And then they're perfected by the Custodian themselves. So if the Custodian wants his spear to be a certain length, he can lengthen it, or they can lengthen it. They can make it shorter if they want like something like an Equa spear, which is my favorite type of spear, which I really want to learn how to fight with. Yeah. I like African weapons.
We could do a whole episode of Constantine Valdor. I will just briefly say that he is a really important figure for the Custodians through the Horus Heresy. He was present at the Battle of Prospero. He is described as being the closest thing to a Primarch without actually being a Primarch.
He actually has the Primarch rules in second and third edition.
Correct, but he's technically not a Primarch.
He's not a Primarch, but he has their rules.
But he's closest thing to it.
Yep.
And so he believes that the belief is that he's the King in Yellow, which is a feature in Dan Abnett's Bequin novels, which are the follow-up to
finish those damn books,
which is the follow-up to Ravenor and Eisenhorn, for people who are curious. And the common fan theory, and I love this, by the way, is that Valdor is searching for the Emperor's true name, a word of enuncia. Enuncia is a reality-altering power language. And if they can find the Emperor's true name and speak it using enuncia, this might free the Emperor from the Golden Throne. It's basically, the idea is, the theory is that Valdor's loyalty is so strong that he went out into the warp to find this so that it couldn't be used against the Emperor.
I like that.
Which I think is really interesting.
I had the mental image of him finally doing it and the Emperor like getting up from the chair and then like 3 Grey Knights running and duct taping him back to the chair. He's just like, oh, dang it.
So yeah, we could do a whole episode on Valdor, and I think we should. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but I will say that I thought that was a really interesting idea. One of the other most widely held fan theories is that the Custodes are basically Primarchs, but they don't have the warp juice that the actual Primarchs have. They are
I can see that.
That the Custodes are the pinnacle of physical genetic engineering. That they're the highest thing that the Imperium can do with that. But it going any further requires tapping into the Immaterium. So
what I find interesting about the Custodians is that they were made prior to Erda.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, we don't actually know when Erda showed up.
Right.
That's one of the big things.
We don't know much about Erda.
We know that Astarte showed up during the Dark Age. But we don't know when Erda showed up. And Erda,
okay. You're gonna have to explain who Astarte is.
Astarte is the girl that worked on the Astartes project she was the bioalchemist that helped with the Astartes.
She was a Selenite, wasn't she?
Yeah, she also led the coup with the Thunder Warriors and was killed.
Right. She was a wizard from the moon.
Yeah.
Destiny reference. Sorry, I couldn't resist. No, she was a she was a geneticist essentially from the Selenite enclave on Luna.
But one of the things that I want to know is, did Erda also help with the Custodes? But she never mentions it. But she does mention that the Primarchs are her sons, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, well, Space Marines are templated and Custodians are not. So again, you're talking about Henry Ford and the Model T versus Stradivarius. Well, Stradivarius and his violins is what I was going to say.
Yeah,
like they're very different ways to get things done.
But one of my big things is I think I know the Custodians were made first. My working theory is this. Erda and the Emperor worked and made the Custodians, and the Custodians were almost perfect. Then the Emperor wanted something more. So they made Litu, which was the experimental Space Marine. He didn't work. He's a proto-Primarch, just about. Then they made the Primarchs, but the reason that Erda didn't want to make the Primarchs is because he had to steal knowledge from the Dark Gods to make them. So, yeah, there's a lot there that I want to know, and I need to pick apart Aaron Densky-Bowden's brain about it.
Well, we should get him on the show as a guest.
Yes, we should. Because I know Erda, Malkador, and the Emperor were in like a polycule.
Well, that seems very likely to me. I got to be honest.
In all fairness, she does say at one point they were lovers.
Again, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
One interesting fan theory is that the Custodes are only immortal in the Emperor's presence, and that they begin to age and weaken when they're very far from him or far from Terra.
Trajan Valoris is kind of ancient, and he still looks like a dude.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's it's a theory. It is in fact something Aaron Dembski-Bowden said one time. So maybe, possibly, I don't know. One other theory is that the Custodes have no free will at all. That they are just.
I love this theory.
Well, why don't you talk about it?
So the theory is that everything that they have done or will do in the history of forever was already planned by the Emperor, and you can actually see it on his star chart where he planned everything out, including the heresy and everything that followed. The theory that they are just automatons, I love. But what is the fan theory? Because that's my take on the fan theory.
So there's a book called Valdor, Birth of the Imperium. And in this book, a dying Thunder Warrior taunts Constantine Valdor by listing everything the Emperor has taken from him. His birth name, his identity, his dreams, his free will. And he asks, what else can the Emperor take from you? To which Valdor replies, nothing. Which is interesting. And basically, this novel describes that whenever Valdor has any kind of thought that would be disloyal, it is immediately replaced by an intense compulsion to refine his training, his defensive plans, his armor, a mental override that he himself recognizes as something that's implanted from outside.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the Custodes are biological automata. They're philosopher kings on the surface, but their capacity for genuine rebellion or original thought has been excised.
So you're saying they're literally his 10,000 echo chamber.
I mean, this is a theory that comes from a book. It's a very popular theory. I think it's interesting.
In the animation for the launch of 3rd edition, Constantine Valdor states that he watched the Emperor make the giant star chart and all of the like angel iconography and everything, and he says that he doesn't know what it is. But not only that, he doesn't have a guess or anything. It's just, I don't know. And then it moves on.
There's an anthology called The Era of Ruin. And there's a story in there that says the Custodians hate the Emperor, that they view him as a totally evil space lich, essentially, while remaining utterly incapable of disobeying him. Now, I gotta admit, it's very 40K to have these guys who look awesome, who sound awesome, who are just like the epitome of awesome, but are in fact slaves at the most basic fundamental level.
It would also make a lot of sense with the blood games being a way of exercising that.
Yeah, it would.
So I like that theory as well. I like that theory.
The next one is that the Custodes are an anti-Primarch failsafe.
I've heard this one, and this is another one that I really like, where it takes 10,000 Primarchs to take down all of them, the legions included. But I do think that the Emperor planned for only 9. I think the Emperor actually planned for the 9 Primarchs to fall.
So
but that's my theory.
Well, we know that Custodians were assigned to watch Lorgar after Monarchia. And we know that
Monarchia.
I
know, but it's Malarchia.
It's Monarchia.
I know, but it's funny to call it Malarkey.
And after Guilliman was resurrected, the Tribune that's hanging out with him, we know that he secretly conducted combat drills and kill simulations to determine how many Custodians it would require to assassinate Guilliman if required, if necessary. And his conclusion was that this would only be possible if we caught him completely by surprise. So who knows? It's possible that the Custodians are, or were, or maybe were adapted to become an anti-Primarch failsafe. We don't know.
So you want to go even crazier than that? I think the Sisters of Battle, created by the Custodes, are an anti-Space Marine unit. There are hundreds of thousands of sisters. They have successfully taken down the Imperium. I give them the W for that one. But their method of warfare is very similar to Space Marines, though a little bit more zealous. I can see them as the distraction needed for the Custodians to teleport in and kill the leaders.
Another theory I like is that the Emperor loves the Custodes more than his Primarchs. Given how he treats the Primarchs with borderline abuse, like Mortarion and Angron, I mean, it goes to show that maybe he does give a shit more about the Custodians than about the Primarchs, even though the Primarchs were his greatest work.
So my whole thing about the Emperor not liking the Primarchs is it's very clear that he does care, because he had to get rid of that part of himself to kill Horus. So he did care about the Primarchs. But
Maybe.
He's also an evil, tyrant, abusive father who has no sense of himself or others.
And there's an alternate theory that the Custodes are jealous of the Astartes, that there's a profound and bitter jealousy towards the Space Marines, and especially the Primarchs, because the Custodes resent that imperfect beings like the Astartes get all the glory and they get to lead the fight in the crusade while the Custodes are left standing guard in a palace.
I could see it. I could see it.
They feel like they're the true masterworks of the Emperor, and that the Primarchs were given all the fun stuff to do.
I mean, could you imagine if the 10,000 were allowed to lead Space Marine, like if they were Space Marine captains, like how much more crazy Space Marines would be?
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. Like, I could see, like, you would take the current chapter masters and that would be your lieutenants, and then you would have a custodian leading. So you would have something that's way smarter, way more adept than a Space Marine leading Space Marines.
Just briefly, I'd like to go over Trajan Valoris. He's the 17th Captain General. Only 17 in 10,000 years. That's pretty great.
You gotta bump those numbers up, people. Come on.
He's the current Supreme Commander of the Custodians, holds a seat amongst the High Lords of Terra.
Yep.
We know that he won 2 blood games, which is unprecedented. And he led the Custodians in the Battle of Lion's Gate alongside Guilliman. He's a decisive and politically astute leader. And he's guided the Custodes through their transition from the Palace Guardians to a much more active Crusaders, which is, that's worthy of admiration. Aside from that, though, I don't know that Trajan is all that interesting. What do you think?
I could tell you that Trajan is interesting. That jerk won't stay dead. You kill him once, he gets back up. He pops his one-time use per game ultimate twice because he's a jerk. He has 12 attacks at strength 10 or something like that, or it's 10 attacks at strength 12. He has 1 billion attacks and is the best missile in the entire game. You don't even attach him to a squad. You just shoot him out at your opponent like a missile.
I will say I think Valoris is possibly a better politician than any of the other Captain Generals.
Also probably better than some of the other High Lords of Terra.
Well, he is a High Lord, which is that's why I'm saying he's had a lot more experience in the political theater than any other Captain General that I believe.
It's also one of the things that he gave a lot of counsel to Guilliman. Him and what's her name? My mind went blank. Morvenfall are the two that he spent the most time in council with before his crusade. So I could see them being like both political and military leaders that Guilliman would want to have near him at almost all times, because they're way better than the Fabricator General of Mars. Like, just putting that out there, the Fabricator General of Mars, depending on which one you go with, because one died recently, they're very, very stingy at what they do. They're not going to be, they're not going to budge on a lot of things, even to the Primarchs. And then you have what? The Assassins? Yeah, that High Lord of Terra is probably not listening too much for Guilliman either. Is probably getting some assassins ready for Guilliman.
Well, that's why Valoris is on the council. It's on the High Lord seat. I imagine him just being there stops a whole lot of High Lord bullshit regarding Guilliman and him being the region of Terra and all that. I imagine Valoris just showing up and sitting down in his chair, 5 High Lords of Terra like, you know what? I'm not going to do that today. I had plans to like maybe scheme a little bit, but I'm not going to do it.
Oh, dang it. I guess I'll just have to come back next week with my ridiculous schemes.
Micah says that Valdor is his favorite Custodes. Hey, you know what? Valdor is pretty awesome. He may be something else entirely from a typical Custodes. We're not entirely sure.
I mean, yeah, he is significantly better than Custodes, which is very strange.
Ricardo Andre says here, his headcanon is that the Emperor grew to love the Primarchs extremely due to the trauma of broken love thanks to Erda. He's afraid to love and forces himself to see them as tools, but at the end, he loves them.
I love this theory because of one thing. When Erda betrayed the Emperor never retaliated against Erda. he in fact protected her at almost all costs. So when Erda died, a piece of the Emperor was like really saddened by it.
We have a great comment from Rush21129 says that's essentially a new Captain General every 600 years. Very good. Great. I'm glad somebody did the math. Thank you for that.
Every 600 years. That's actually not that great.
I mean, it's
that is
good.
2 Dantes.
Dante is pretty special. That's true. All right.
Or technically 1 Greyfax, if you want to get technical.
Oh, well, we could get crazy with that. Ricardo Andre, back again. Thank you much, sir. He says we should rank the Primarchs as politicians. For him, Conrad Kurz is 3rd on the list. I am interested to discuss that. I could see, well, fear is a very strong political tool. So
it very much is.
You know, maybe he is the Grand Moff Tarkin, you know. The tighter you squeeze your fist, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. I don't know. Yeah, ranking the Primarchs as politicians. Well, I'd like to do a ranking of the Primarchs for sure. That would be a tier list of Primarchs would be awesome.
I think we should add how they are as political leaders into that.
Well, some of them, Gilliman, are excellent, and some of them, Horus also, some of them are terrible,
Angron.
like Angron. Yeah,
I like how both our minds went to the exact same Primarchs.
Yeah. So Fulgrim would probably be a pretty good politician.
Fulgrim was an excellent politician.
Yeah, Sanguinius would be a very good politician.
Yeah.
Lion would not. Lion's not a very good politician.
Lion wouldn't be a good politician. He'd be a good dictator.
Well, yes.
Weirdly enough, you know who would be good that I don't think you would suspect?
Perturabo?
Well, yes, I would put Perturabo up higher on that list. But I think Leman Russ. He's essentially a Jarl. He would be good at it.
You know, that's an interesting point. He's the one you don't see coming. That's for sure. Well, we have about 25 minutes left, and we would like to look at some miniatures. Is that right?
Yes, we got some cool minis this month or this week, and a lot of them come from yours truly. And do you remember when I said, call Ross a butt? I told you butts were coming back.
Look at that. We got some full moons on the tabletop here. Wow. Oh my God, Alexis. Look at their butts. They're just so big.
Look at it. Look at it. Look at it.
Wow. All right. So what exactly are we looking at here?
Okay. So I took a few pictures of well, before we get demonetized, I'm going to switch to a different image. So I took a joke list to a recent tournament because I was sick of playing Ultramarines. I'm just, there's only so many times you can go, oh, you missed a charge, my victors kill your unit. Oh, I move everything into the middle, it's my go turn, I make all my charges, I destroy your army. Oh, you killed both my victors units, good game. So I built this list as a joke. So in order, we have this red demon right here is my Scarbrand. I was running her as Scarbrand for this event. I have a Keeper of Secrets, a Bellicore, and then I have Kairos Fate Weaver, who is taking a very feminine form today. The list had 10 Plague Bearers, 2 Beasts of Nurgle, 10 Demonettes, Celeste, and then in the back you can see the other Keeper of Secrets. Now, for those of you that don't know, Keepers of Secrets are absolute trash right now. They are bottom tier, worst demons, and I wanted to bring them, and I've actually refined this list, and I plan to bring it again because it did surprisingly well. So my first game was against Admech. This list should have tabled me turn 2, but for some reason, my opponent was fighting his dice. He was fighting for his life. Like, I got into combat with one of my keepers into the Onager Dune Crawler here. Now, a Keeper of Secrets does not kill a vehicle. They're not strong enough. I dealt 5 wounds and then destroyed it because he rolled 5 ones. And I was just like, well, okay, then. That just happened. But I really wanted to point out how cool his paint scheme was. because this is not a paint scheme that you really associate with Mechanicus. This looks more
Nurgle.
either Nurgle or a Necron.
It's very
and I really, really like this color scheme. I think it came out really well. His paint scheme was really cool. He's got the little chicken walkers in the back. And then let's see. We got all of my demons up front. This was from my third game where unfortunately I did lose. But you can see all of my demons. I resculpted the whole front end of this keeper to have an actual chest on, boobs on both sides. Unfortunately, her jewel fell off throughout the game. And you can see a dead sanguinary guard on the bottom. This demon, by the way, came out like 6 years ago, I want to say. And that's how old all of these are. Except for Bellicore and her. And you can see that she broke throughout the day. Because this Keeper of Secrets breaks if you look at them.
Yeah, you can see the snapped off arm right there. That's interesting. But the paint scheme does look very good. There's a lot of great colors there. There's a lot of great highlights. The bases look really nice. Yeah, I mean, I think these look great.
And then look at that glorious red. I'm joking.
That is Calypgian, I would say.
But I did want to point out this. All of the highlights and all of the pus and everything painted up on the Nurgle, the Plague Bearers.
The pus.
Everything is highlighted.
The pus.
And there's a mix of really old miniatures. Like this one is one of the, I think, first or second edition Plague Bearers mixed in with the new models. And they really go hard. I absolutely love these.
Interesting.
Let's get rid of these pictures as we go. And then now we have other people's stuff.
Wow, that is a Nurgle force for the ages right there. I see Mortarion. I see 2 great and clean ones. Wow, that is a hell of a force.
This is done by Spore. How the heck do I say that? Nagatia?
Okay.
I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to call you Spore for now because you have a very Spore-themed army, and so we're just going with Spore. They wanted to show off some of their Demon Princes and a lot of their Nurgle stuff, and this looks incredible. I love the color scheme across the entire army. It looks very Nurgle-y. It looks very gross, but at the same time looks absolutely incredible.
So for people who can't see it, this is a much darker than usual Nurgle paint scheme. There's green, but it's layered over some really deep blacks and browns. This is kind of what I would imagine like a Dark Souls version of Nurgle would look like. It's very, very dark.
Yep.
Very black.
This is how I prefer Nurgle demons to look. Like, even if you looked at my Nurgle demons, they're still very toned down. Because I get the comedy of Nurgle and it's very fun, but I like the dark and like disgusting aspect of Nurgle. Like I think that needs to be emphasized more. And then we actually get to see his Mortarion or their Mortarion, their gender.
So in this light, it actually looks a lot better because the previous picture was very dark. So now we can see a lot of the highlights on the black, which I really it makes it pop a lot more to me. I really, really dig it. This looks really good under light.
There's some good conversions here. You got the sword from, I think this is Bellicore's sword, I want to say, or it's a Demon Prince's sword. I forget if it's either. I like the converted head, the very demonic looking, multiple eyes, kind of like a cow skull head. And then standing next to him, we have Rodigus. And Rodigus has full antlers.
Nice.
Insanely well done.
With multiple bells hanging off of him, which is really cool.
I always wondered why Rodigus is kind of carrying like a tree branch. I assume he uses it for magic, but it is kind of weird that he carries like a tree with him. For this one, the conversion is the head itself. Not only do we have the full antlers and everything, we have a lower jaw that hangs down this. It's so cool. This is like a solid 10 out of 10 piece. Like, also the shroomish in the background, incredible.
Yeah, this is very well painted. I like it a lot. I think this is candidate for best painted army at a local tournament.
One thing I would change on this base particularly is add a water effect to it, so that you get the gross slimy look. But it might just be that you have that on there, and with the camera's shutter, you just can't see it, because I think I can see it on the other base. So it might just be a trick of the light. We have a Biophagus here, which is a horrible name for a miniature, but an excellent painted miniature. We have a Demon Prince with wings here in the middle, which looks like a spored out. I want to say this is a Tyrannid arm.
It's like a walking mushroom with little fly wings.
Yeah, I really like it. And then you have a Herald over here.
If Slender Man was a mushroom and had fly wings, it would be this guy.
And then we have a better picture of it, and the detail on this miniature is incredible. I really, really like this.
The color blending, I think, is what I really like.
I might steal this idea to make this creature. This looks really well done.
Love it. He's even got a Nurgle themed mouse pad underneath it, if you look.
Oh yeah, he does. Or they do.
That's commitment to the bit right there.
Also, look at that clean keyboard. Mine is not that clean. Mine is covered in dust.
Yeah, well, if you're going to show it in a picture, you might make it clean.
Yeah. The wings, the coloration on the wings looks really nice. Mm-hmm. This whole model is just absolutely incredible.
Agreed. It looks really good.
And then we'll move on from that.
Whoa, look at this dude.
A samurai. This is from Nestor.
Oh. Nestor Fatobra.
That's their Space Ronin.
Nice. That's an MIU weapon on his shoulder there.
Yep. And it has the camouflage of what looks to be the Mantis Warriors, I want to say.
It might just be like that's the way the old minis looked. Is this a 3D print, or is this something from old first edition?
So this doesn't look like a 3D print. It looks like a third-party miniature. Because there's no 3D print lines on it.
Okay.
That's the first thing I looked for. It looks really good. I like the hazard stripes on the gun itself to tell you that it's dangerous. I like the fact that this guy probably has the worst tinnitus ever.
He says it's Badab Salamander's camo.
Okay. I knew it was one of the armies from there. Nice. Good base. Excellent.
Yeah, well done. No notes.
I love this.
Looks great to me. This is a very attention-getting mini. I like it a lot. He says it's a 3D print with extra bits.
That's a 3D print? Damn, you have a really good resin printer.
Yeah, well, we've seen some of these guys before. We talked about these Marines with the studs on their shoulder pads before.
Oh, the pleasure bumps.
What were you saying about getting demonetized?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a Thalax in the background. That Thalax looks really cool. Love it.
I love the Thalaxes. Also, it fits really well in with them.
It does. It really does. And there's looks like a rare female model there. I'm not sure if that's a rogue trader or a ganger or what, but she has a Space Marine shoulder pad on. So hey.
Yeah.
Looks cool.
So next up, I wanted to post the plethora of models that I painted the other day. So I sat down and painted 35 inquisitorial agents.
Good Lord.
So, and I went kind of crazy on some of the theming. Like I have my half knight aesthetic on these what are they? They're
Crusaders?
Oh my god, what are they called? They're the Necromunda gang.
Eschers? Horlocks.
The ones that got censored because they had nooses.
Oh, Redemptionists.
Something like that. But I converted them.
Cotter.
Yeah, Chowder. But if you look in the background, you can see all of the banners and everything like standing up. There's multiple rogue traders in here. There's multiple agencyers. There's just a ton of stuff. You got some Necromunda miniatures in here.
Yeah.
And I wanted to finish everything for my agents as much as possible to get them done and over with.
There's a watcher in the dark down there too.
There should be 3 of them. Yeah, there's 3.
Wow.
Also, I have Mad Max, one of the original first edition Rogue Trader miniatures that they made that was a hireling for Necromunda.
That's right.
And it's definitely not Mad Max.
Definitely
it totally
not.
is.
Legally distinct.
Yep. There's a first edition, what is this? Commissar in there. There's the 4th edition box set naval officer. That's a Space Marine that came with the Space Marine box set. I will get to them as well. And yeah, there is Janice Drake, Captain Can Opener, and 2 of the rogue traders. Vanis, I think her name is.
Vane is Elucia Vane. Yeah, we talked about this with Kaiser on Wednesday.
Yep.
And we got a super chat from Hooligan Mulligan. Thank you very much, sir. He says, sorry for the delay. Got mugged by turtles in New York City. Turtles.
But just the sheer scale of this. And I had a ton of fun doing these guys because these are all heads from they're supposed to be Fractus I can't say that with my accent. Please say that.
Frateris Militia.
Yes. I can't say it. I'm trying, but I wanted them to be like knight-like, but to show that their armor has been so beaten up, worn, and just destroyed that they just have their helms left and they're just fighting. But if you notice, some of them have the Repentia arms because I cut them up and made sure that they had the correct war gear and everything.
Yeah, these guys look like pilgrims going to Terra, and they're gonna be cutting their way through anybody who stands in their way.
Yep. These are unfortunately the tips of the guns aren't painted because I have all 3 of them sitting aside. And yeah, you can see the old Death Cult assassins, the new Death Cult assassin,
Nice.
the Miracleist there as well. And then I have my Inquisition, which has all of my Inquisitors on it.
Nice.
There is every single Inquisitor that has been released for Warhammer 10th for Warhammer 40K is on this.
You have Hector Rex in there?
Hector Rex is he's in a different one because he's too tall.
Okay.
So he's not in this picture, and neither is
Karamazov?
Yeah, because I can show you Karamazov real quick. We have time. Give me 2 seconds to grab him.
I wonder. I noticed that she's got the older version of God. What is that guy's name? The one with the eagle on his arm. Because the new model, I don't care for the new model at all. So I'm really kind of excited to see the old model. What's the name of the guy with the eagle on his arm? What's the name of the guy with the eagle on his arm? What's that guy?
That is oh my god, his name just completely left my brain. He just had a new miniature and it looks terrible.
Yeah, I was pointing that out to chat. I was like, I'm glad you're using the old mini.
Oh yeah, I won't Inquisitor Cotias because I won't buy the new one. It looks terrible.
Cotias, yeah.
But this, and I'm gonna just put me on the screen real quick.
There's Karamazov. Look at him. Wow, and that's a really nice conversion.
Yep.
Well done.
So I put him in the newer Dreadnought chassis. Well, not the Dreadnought chassis. I put him in the whoops, this, and then nope, add the stage. There we go. I put him in the Invictor Tactical Warsuit.
Ah. Well, he is driving a warsuit. If whatever that throwing thing he drives around on, it is essentially a warsuit. Croots, look at those Croots. Look at the Tau. Look at is that a Harlequin back there or a Ranger? Oh wow.
Yeah, that's a Ranger. And then moving swiftly on so I can get to everyone else's. You can just see some more Inquisition. You can see his nipple is highlighted.
We have a last minute super chat from Necroplayer97. By the way, sorry for losing to Fantasy in the race to adding Catgirls to Warhammer. Better luck in the next one. Also,
I know, I'm so mad.
Also, she's a muscle girl that seemingly no one was weird about, so even better. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm lost. What happened?
Okay.
Wait. The tiger men, right? This is about the
Hold
tiger
on.
men.
Technically, we got the Tyrellian, which is classed a dog warrior. So we got dog women before we got cat women.
So he's talking. I believe he's talking about the Tigermen of End, which are in the most recent update for Warhammer Total War Warhammer 3. So that's where the cat girl comes from. I think that he's talking about here. Yep. So he says, better luck in the next one. Also, she's a muscle girl that no one was weird about, so even better. I think he's still referring to the character from the Tigermen. So that's really cool. I'm glad nobody's weird about her because the Tigermen are cool, and I'm excited to see the Tigermen enter Warhammer Fantasy.
Same. So this one is done by Lenny. It looks like a Blade Champion, custom Blade Champion. Yep. I like this
Age of Sigmar?
No, this is a Custodian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I really like this. It's made out of a Warden body with a hooded helmet, which that's pretty cool. It's got the I forget, the Misericordia on the side, and then it has a long two-handed sword that's holding out one-handed in a challenging posture, probably to either come out and stab or to grab the sword itself. I'm going to assume that they're fighting correctly because they're Custodians.
That is very nice work on the power blade effects. That looks really great.
Yeah, but there is one thing. There is one thing here.
I'm going to assume it's a work in progress, and I'm not going to say it. I'm going to assume it's not finished.
I won't say it, but I'm joking.
So what's happening for people who are listening? She's zooming in on the base because the base is not done, and I'm infamous for saying, "Hey, you need to do something with that base." So,
okay, and then the last one that we have, which was just added, is by I immediately forgot the name because I'm good at this. Hellfire, and it is a great unclean one, and look at that. That is very great and very unclean.
Well, the colors are very vibrant. That's what we had the ones that were really dark before, and that worked, but also really vibrant colors also work really good on Nurgle. So I would say that's one of the things that stands out to me is the colors.
Now, the one thing that I would add to this is if you get a chance, get this technical paint. It's just Blood for the Blood God. Add that to the miniature. Well, first blackwash all of your red. And then add the Blood for the Blood God and take a splotchy, like destroyed ass looking paintbrush.
Or a sponge.
Sponging works too, but I use a absolutely annihilated paintbrush. And then you just dip it on and you just do this until you get like a crust at the end, and it'll pop. It'll make it look like actual blood, and it'll look great. I love this. This is great looking.
Yeah, good work.
Because it's a great unclean one. Get it?
Well, it's not a pretty good unclean one. It's a great unclean one.
I also love when people do bases for these. Like I've painted 6 of these now since I moved to Iceland, which is really weird. But every time I paint this guy up, whenever I do base work for him, I always take my hand while the glue is still setting and drag my hand off from where his rear hits the base. I drag all of that off, and then I fill it in with mud to create an effect that his stomach is dragging on the ground, and then fill it with like blood and pus.
You know, as Tina Belcher would say, this episode has a lot more butts in it than I expected.
Yeah, there is a lot of butts in this episode. I don't know what to say. Custodians, they're glorious, they're golden, they have good abs, probably good butts.
Do you have any final thoughts on the Adeptus Custodes for this episode?
So, hear me out. If I were to add a unit to the Adeptus Custodes, it actually wouldn't be directly to the Adeptus Custodes. I would add an Eyes of the Emperor as an Imperial agent.
Yes, that. Great idea.
I would have it be assigned as a lieutenant to squads. So it's not leading the squads, but it can join in with an Inquisitor. It can join in with a Rogue Trader to make the squad really feel like actual agents. And I've made rules for them before as a homebrew thing. And I really think that that is an agent that we desperately need and might actually be something that makes agents actually win a goddamn game.
An Eyes of the Emperor model, first of all, would be great. An Eyes of the Emperor attachment you can add to units would be awesome. And I do love the idea that it is part of the Imperial Agents faction. That would be ideal. What a great idea, Alexis. That's fantastic. I'm 150% behind that.
Yeah. But Ross, what are your closing thoughts?
The 10,000, the Custodes, Henry Cavill's chosen faction. They are beautiful. The new models look amazing. Their lore is really cool. They have a lot of really interesting designs and characters. I love them as the ideal of the philosopher king, right? The ideal that these are the emperor's chosen companions. But I also love the kind of darker theories that surround them. And I want to lean into that a little bit more.
I think that is something like that we both like about 40K, where it looks positive until you look beneath the surface, where it's like, oh yeah, bright golden armored heroes to the rescue. And it's like, they don't have a choice. They're just tools. They don't have free will. They hate everything. They're constantly trying to kill them, but they can't.
That's right. Like that's a fascinating and very 40K approach.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I take us out of this episode today?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So remember, everybody, in the grim darkness of the far future,
there is only lore.
Thank you for joining us on Lorebeards 40K. Come check out our Discord if you want to know more about what's coming up or vote on our topics that we're going to cover. And we will see you guys we will see you guys in a few days and then next week.
Heck yeah. All right. Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.